and they're still going to the championship game every year. Yeah. That defense is a killer.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's one of the best defenses I've ever seen. Sorry, Asher, let's do it.
It's okay. We are ready to go if you both are ready to get started.
Sure. Yep.
Good to go. Okay. All right, so we have the intro at the top. Awesome. All right. So we will start with our intro.
Okay.
In 5, 4, 3, 2.
All right, so who's going to win, DeSantis or Trump? Correct answer, no one knows. But we're going to try to figure it out. We're bringing on former Republican Congressman Joe Walsh to talk about it. He's also the host of the White Flag with Joe Walsh podcast. Joe, welcome back.
Cenk, always good to be with you, my friend.
All right, so Joe, first, let me dispense with this. Does anyone not name Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump have a chance to win the Republican primary in 24?
No. If it's not going to be Trump, Cenk, it's going to be the Trumpiest person around. And right now, the only Trumpy person that registers with Republican voters besides Trump is DeSantis. Nobody else is even measuring in the polls.
Yeah, it's a lot of it early on is name recognition, although it's a little bit complicated with Trump because he also has tons of negative baggage with him, but not among Republicans, which is going to be the main part of the conversation. But you're right, every time I see cable news anchors talking about Liz Cheney, I laugh and laugh and laugh. Because in their cocktail circuit, Liz Cheney has a 97% approval rating. But in a Republican primary, it's going to be less than 0. So now, bringing it down between DeSantis and Trump, help us figure this out. Because you got good polls like Emerson, et cetera, not like fly-by-night polls saying, no, Trump still has a 26-point lead nationwide among Republican primary voters. And there's a good number of polls with Trump still leading 20, 25, 30 points, right? And then you look at polls like New Hampshire, also a legitimate polling organization, and DeSantis has a 12-point lead in New Hampshire. Now, part of that is explained by the fact that it's New Hampshire and they pay more attention because they're one of the first primaries, they're the first primary. But there's still a bit of a mystery out there. So what do you make of those seemingly conflicting polls?
Well, first, just to comment on what you said a moment ago, yes, there is 0 room in the Republican Party for never Trumpers like Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, or myself. But people, Cenk, like Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, Mike Pompeo, these people have no prayer, none. It's got to be, look, and you and I've said this before, maybe Trump is fading, though I don't think he is, but Trumpism is not fading. This is now firmly, my former party is now firmly the party of Trumpism. That means it's the party of cruelty, fear, authoritarianism, and sidling up to white supremacy. That's what this party is now. And DeSantis speaks to that better than anybody but Trump or Tucker Carlson.
Joe,
go ahead,
actually, before you go to the disparity on the polls, I want to say on that for one more second. I always wonder with the Mike Pompeos of the world, does he think he can win? Because people, they live in their own bubbles, and probably a lot of people are telling him, oh yeah, Mike, you got this, dog, right? Or is he running to be Secretary of State again, VP? What's the play here?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think people like Pompeo, Haley, Cruz, pretty much everybody but DeSantis is assuming Trump won't stay in. And Cenk, they all know, like I believe, that DeSantis, once people see him on the stage, on the national stage, I don't think he's going to come across very well. And Pompeo believes that. Cruz believes that. Rubio believes that. They know DeSantis. They know he's weird with people. He's thin-skinned. He's not good on his feet. So their only play is Trump's out of the picture, and they think they can beat DeSantis.
So what's the thesis for Trump being out of the picture? Because this whole idea of he'll be embarrassed so he won't run, that's already gone. He's already running, and he's incapable of being embarrassed. So do they think getting indicted would get him out of the picture? But wait, wouldn't that make him more popular among Republicans?
Hell yes, Cenk. It's so funny that you ask me that. I had a former supporter of mine who's a pretty good Trump supporter still. He called me today. I picked up, and we started to talk. And I asked him. I said, I think Trump's going to be indicted. I said, Steve, if Trump's indicted, will you still support him? He said what you just said. After a couple expletives, he said the deep state will never let go of Trump. If Trump is indicted, I will work even harder to get him reelected. I think an indicted Donald Trump is stronger within the Republican Party. But Cenk, look, they're all cowards, and I include DeSantis here. They're all cowards. For what, 7-8 years, they've all been praying that somebody or something else will take Trump out. The January 6th committee, impeachment, because these guys have never had the courage to take Trump on and take him out themselves.
Okay, so that leads me to conclude that you're going to tell me the numbers that show Trump winning are more accurate. So Trump's Achilles heel, though, is electability. Now some Republicans are concerned. I love this guy. I love how vicious he is, but shoot, he might not win. Is that a real threat to Trump?
Yeah, and understand, and everybody, Cenk, listening to us right now needs to understand that every Republican who supports DeSantis is a Trump supporter. They all say the same thing. I love Trump, Joe. I want Trump, Joe, but maybe DeSantis can win. But they're all Trump supporters. So if DeSantis does run, and by the way, Cenk, I'm not even convinced he's going to run, but if he does run and he does fade, these are all Trump voters. So that is definitely there. That's the best thing DeSantis has going for him. But no, look, this is still Trump's thing. This is still his nomination. And all these talking heads on MSNBC and CNN and all the rest writing his political obituary, I think they're crazy.
Yeah, so but DeSantis does have that lead in New Hampshire, and people in New Hampshire do pay more attention. And so I wonder if it hurts Trump if he loses a couple of early primaries, if that compounds the electability issue, and Republicans really start to get nervous about Trump being able to win. But what doesn't help, Joe, is that a poll out last week had Trump beating Biden by 4 points. So if the Democrats are running Biden and he's so weak that he's losing to Trump, by running Biden, aren't the Democrats helping Trump win the Republican primary?
Yeah, by running Biden again, Cenk, they're erasing Trump's electability problem. I mean, just look at this classified docs issue. That had Trump by the rights, right? I mean, look what he did. And even though there are differences in what Trump did and Biden did, doesn't matter. Those differences do not matter. Now the classified documents, that whole issue with Pence too and Biden has strengthened Trump because now everybody does it. Yes, Donald Trump, I believe, and I'm hearing it from a lot of his supporters, Trump believes he can beat Biden, and a lot of his supporters increasingly believe he can beat Biden as well.
So, Joe, I never thought about this until this conversation. 66% of Republicans still believe that Joe Biden stole the election, that he didn't actually win. So, if 2/3 of Republican voters believe that Trump won last time, doesn't that also help get rid of his electability problem? Because they think, what do you mean? He's won 2 elections. He's the most electable guy in the world.
Well, it does and they do, and that 2/3 is low. Cenk. I think it's closer to like 80% deep down really believe it. Many Republicans are afraid to publicly say it, but they say it to me privately. Yes, but then again, that also goes to, because what I hear a lot from Republican Trump supporters is, Joe, the 2020 election was stolen, but man, if that's all we talk about, it's going to be harder to win in 2024. So that works both for and against Trump. And by the way, Cenk, if you've noticed Trump last weekend, he's trying his best to focus on the future, to look ahead. I think generally he's going to be pretty good about that in public.
Is there a single Republican tough enough to beat Trump?
No. And this is what just so freaking pisses me off. DeSantis isn't tough. None of them are. And Cenk, here's the catch-22 these cowards have all put themselves in. They all enabled him. They all created this monster, but now none of them can take the monster on because they know the monster has a great reservoir of support in the party. So again, they're all hoping and praying something else will take him out. None of them can go toe-to-toe with him on a stage. None of them.
Is there a single policy difference between DeSantis and Trump?
It's always hard with Trump because I don't even know really what Trump is when it comes to policy. But no, generally it's the same. It's the same white nationalism, screw the rest of the world. Let's win all these culture wars and let's be a big bully. Generally, they both stand for the same thing.
Is there a single policy difference between a single candidate running for office or potentially running for president on the Republican side, other than the never Trumpers like Liz Cheney?
Yes. You will find if Pompeo runs, if Nikki Haley runs, you will find there will be Republicans like that who will say, as Pompeo said last week, we got to give Ukraine whatever they want and we have to win this war. This war ends when Ukraine wins it. That goes against Trump's non-interventionist, leave Ukraine alone kind of a tendency that's there in the Republican Party. So I think you'd see a fight on that whole Ukraine-Russia issue.
So we're back to a fight over Putin. Okay.
A fight over Putin. Yeah.
Great. That's the one policy difference in the Republican Party.
Cenk, nothing. Domestically, there's zero policy difference domestically.
That's amazing. Okay. Here's what I get out of this conversation. Summarize, Joe. The only thing they have against Trump is electability. If Trump knocks that out by whether it's through polling or looking forward, etc., even the momentum DeSantis has will be reversed and Trump will win easily. Does that sound about right?
That's spot on, Cenk. Deep down, they all believe and they all say he's a loser, Trump is, and he can never win again. They don't have the balls to say that publicly. And none of them will say he's unfit. They'll just kind of hint at he can't maybe win again. But that's it. That's their only objection.
All right, Joe Walsh, keeping it real. Okay, that's why I love these conversations. Make sure you check out White Flag with Joe Walsh. That's his podcast. I was on one of the episodes. You got to find that. Listen to that, isn't it?
That was a good conversation.
It was a great one. All right, Joe, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Keep it up.
You too.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Joe.
Asher, you're the best. Whatever they're paying you, anywhere you need to make. No, he was still listening. I love Asher. Let the record show Joe Walsh loves Asher.
Oh, I love Joe Walsh. You're the best.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Cenk.
Take care, Joe.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, are you ready for Roe?
Yep.
All right, I will call.
The best part of that was I didn't know he was still listening.
Isn't that what the judge told him when he wasn't paying child support?
Oh. Okay. By the way, Asher, we're never having him on again, okay?
That's it.
It's so weird how reasonable Republicans are once they leave office.
I was thinking the same thing too.
All right, he didn't answer, so I'm going to text his contact and I will let you know. 1 second.
Riz. Okay. Yeah, he's definitely Riz.
It's not just Republicans, it's politicians.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi, how's it going?
good.
Wonderful.
Yep. Hey, Ro, how you doing, brother?
Good. How are you?
Good.
How's the new year?
Lovely. Overall, lovely. How's yours?
Good. Good. It's a new Congress, different being in the minority, but we're figuring it out.
Yep.
All right, so we are ready to get started if you both are ready to go.
Yep.
I'm ready when you are.
Let's do it.
Wonderful. All right, no intro. I will just count you directly in, Jank.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, great. All right, so we will get started in 5, 4, 3, 2.
All right, let's talk to the most open and transparent congressman in America. Ro Khanna, California 17th District, the original Justice Democrat, joins us. How are you, Congressman?
Jank, I'm wondering if I'm getting set up with that kind of an introduction, but I'll take it.
No, you're not. No, I mean it. Look, I brought you on because I want to talk about what progressives are going to do in the next 2 years, because it is an interesting and challenging question. But since the interview got booked, things have happened in California. Katie Porter has entered the California Senate race, and then Adam Schiff did as well. And now there is a lot of buzz about Barbara Lee and yourself. So will you be entering the California Senate race?
What I've said is I'm going to take a very careful look at it, but also what Barbara does. Barbara Lee is a close friend of mine. I have admired her for a long time, especially on her anti-war advocacy. We've had a number of good conversations. We're both from Northern California. We're both progressive, and it would be a shame to be splitting that vote. So I'm waiting to see whether she's going to put together a very serious campaign, factoring that into my decision.
Interesting. Okay. And so if she doesn't run, does that mean green light?
If she doesn't run, I would say that the probability of running is much, much higher. And if she does run, it's lower. But obviously, that's not the only factor, but it is something that I will weigh seriously.
All right, makes sense. So one more thing about that. So Politico and a couple of other places had written about you're weighing a Senate run, or some advisors and other people you're connected to, but not you, talk about a presidential run. So let me ask you about that. Is there any possibility in 24, whether Biden runs or doesn't run, that you might run?
No, I would support Bernie Sanders if he didn't, and I'm still building, and not. It's 24 is not the time.
Okay, I'm hearing 28. Okay, got it. Okay, now let's go to the issue of the progressives. So, there's a lot of talk about people getting kicked off committees, et cetera. Sure, it's bad. They shouldn't be kicked off. It's obviously political retribution, not based in fact. We can skip all that. That's clear. But the question is, wait, what are we going to do on those committees? What can forget Democrats? What can progressives do in Congress over the next 2 years to make any difference at all?
One is hold the line. I know this may sound not very grand, but remember the years of triangulation where you had Bill Clinton basically go to moderate Senate Republicans, cut deals with the Republican House, and the progressive Democrats were just left holding the bag. We need to make sure that doesn't happen. We need to make sure that there are not budget agreements or other agreements with the White House, Senate majority, and Senate moderate Republicans that Democrats have to swallow that aren't good for progressive policies. The second thing is we got to push for executive action. And third, we need to organize to try to get something done in the Senate, like on Tyree Nichols. I mean, making sure that I've been pushing the Peace Act for 5 years. It finally passed the House change the standard of force. So like every other country, force becomes a last resort. In this country, it's not. It's if an officer thinks it's reasonable. That passed the House. What are we doing in the Senate? How do we put pressure to make sure that the Senate is acting?
So let's break those down one by one. What are the executive actions that progressives would love for Biden to take?
There are a lot on the environment. I mean, you could start by, for example, having much more strict bans on PFAS, which is causing cancer, environmental racism. You can have much stronger standards on fuel efficiency, on methane, on coal. You know, the Inflation Reduction Act was a lot of the carrots, but there haven't been many sticks legislatively. And the question is, what are we going to do on that from an executive action point of view? You can take executive action on some of the things with immigration to finally get relief for those who are undocumented, to make sure that we're repealing Title 42 and not just denying everyone asylum claims in this country. And then we can do further things on labor. I mean, obviously we need a $15 prevailing wage, but there are other avenues of the executive branch where if they're federal contractors, that we can have labor standards, standards for apprenticeships, standards for wages.
So let's be honest, Joe Biden could do all those things tomorrow. He's chosen not to do them for the last couple of years, and it'll probably take a lot of action on progressive support to push him in that direction. Sometimes that works. We had the student debt relief and progressives pushed on that, and Biden did take action. So it's possible. But whether it's that one or holding the line from moderate Democrats doing deals with Republicans, doesn't it require progressives to pretty actively criticize other Democrats up to and including President Biden?
Yes, and we have at times. Now, probably not as often as some of your viewers may want, but you know, I took the New York Times op-ed in June of last year, saying the president wasn't doing enough on inflation and proposed very concrete policies, some of which, by the way, he's now doing. Like I said, why aren't we selling from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and buying back when the prices are lower? Why aren't we taking more action with a windfall profits tax on big oil? So that was one instance at the top of my head where I criticized the president's actions, but there will be times where I think we'll push for further action. I criticized the administration on the $15 wage. I said they should have fired the parliamentarian over it.
Yeah.
Or called for the firing.
Yeah, so of course, Ro, you and I know the real issue is mainstream media, because you took on Buttigieg on the airline issues, and you should have.
That's right.
And because it's not about Buttigieg, it's not about progressives versus conservatives. It's that, no, there's the Secretary of Transportation has a ton of power that he's choosing not to use, and that is deeply frustrating and problematic. But when you do that, the articles that I read critique you instead of him, saying, how dare you justifiably criticize Secretary Buttigieg? How do you get past that problem?
No, it's very hard. I mean, I usually have no problem getting booked on CNN or MSNBC, but they didn't have me on at all to speak about the issue with the airlines, because it's hard to have any criticism. And then when Politico covered it, they covered it in light of, well, is this guy running for president one day, which was not in any way the reason. You don't launch a preemptive attack against one person in a 20-person hypothetical field in a race that you may not enter and the other person may not enter. My reason for criticizing him is that Bernie Sanders and I had called 6 months ago for fines on airlines, and the types of fines that Obama had. Obama had put $20,000, $30,000 fines if airlines were idle on the tarmac, and it worked. And we said, why don't you have those kind of fines on the airline industry if they're canceling flights? If their IT isn't working, they would have an incentive to do that. Then people say, well, you wouldn't have known the IT issue at Southwest. Of course I wouldn't have known. I'm a congressman from Silicon Valley. I don't think I could have figured out that Southwest had an IT issue, nor do I need to. But I know this, if they had massive fines that they would have to pay if they canceled consumer flights, they would figure out how to get that IT fixed, just like they are now. And the Attorney General's called for this. But at the end of the day, no one wanted to discuss that the fines would have worked, and they wanted to make sure that a person from the administration wasn't being criticized. I understand that within reason, but not at the expense of people who are being stranded.
All right, Representative Ro Khanna, California's 17th district, and potential California Senate candidate, depending on Barbara Lee. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Cenk. Always a pleasure.
Indisputable has been named the fastest growing news TV show in the United States of America, compared to all shows on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and roughly 30 others. What do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable. Donald Trump radicalized citizens. He's the chief terrorist. Republicans still want you to think that critical race theory is the greatest evil that can happen in K-12 education. It's not even taught. I guarantee you this, David. If he would have taken a knee during the national anthem to bring awareness to the need for more money for cancer research in America, he would not have had that response. It was the fact that he took a knee for black folk and brown folk. You rather pick the voters because you're scared of the voters picking the politicians. It frightens you. But we coming. When you are in a privileged position, equality looks like oppression to you. The Karenicity runs deep in this one. We provide a mirror for reflection and a mirror for correction. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Let's put up the graphic of this Karen in peak performance. Boom. They want anarchy so they can start creating their own rules.
Can you share with me some examples?
When they were running around during the terrorist attack on January 6th saying, hang Mike Pence. So those are the people I'm talking about. That's a problem, correct? You work for Mike Pence, stand up for the guy. Do not allow the ideology of politics to evaporate the humanity that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, so I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reformed in this country, so I won't stop. And you won't stop either.
Here at the Young Turks, we do our best to bring you the most essential news stories of the day, but we can't cover everything in a 2-hour show. And for the rest, I recommend Ground News. Founded by a former NASA scientist, Ground News uses a revolutionary system that analyzes where the news is coming from and gives you complete transparency on the potential biases these sources may have. That way, you can read between the lines of media bias and break free from the corporate media agenda. In arming you with the context and transparency, you'll have everything you need to think critically about the news and build responsible media literacy for yourself and others. With Ground News, you're not just mindlessly consuming the media, you're part of a movement that is working to hold them accountable and get straight to the facts. Break through the filter bubbles, the propaganda, and the bias, and subscribe to Ground News today.
Field goal here. It's time to switch to beer.
Oh, man.
Oh, God.
Do your best.
He's a little like... Let's go!
Oh.
Okay.
No one's happy now.
Give him another try.
Oh! Wow.
This is the weirdest game.
We've been around for about 20 years and we have about 20 billion views. Am I proud of that? Hell yeah, I am. We put out 20 billion messages in a bottle. Have we helped to move now 2 generations, millennials and Gen Z, to become progressive? Yes, those numbers are real. We moved generations. Were we the only ones? Of course not. But we have been the largest online news show for now decades.
Get some!
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys. There's a couple stories in this show that is going to make me surprisingly angry.
Oh, surprisingly.
Yes.
Surprisingly, everybody.
And so you're of course wondering, where does the surprise come in, Cenk? Because I might have seen you angry once or twice on the Young Turks.
Once or twice.
Yes, well, the surprise comes in which stories?
Probably the first one.
Interesting. Well, I'm more amused at the first one.
No, you will not be.
Okay, let's see how it turns.
He has not seen the videos yet, so.
Okay, yeah, well, I've seen some of them, but it's also in a later story as well, but let's get going.
Well, we begin, unfortunately, with Tim Pool, something that we don't do in the first hour most days, but it has to do with the Tyre Nichols story, and get a load of this.
This is the result of defund the police. This is the result of the attack on the police. I'm sorry, this is reality. This was not a case of white supremacy. This was 5 black cops beating a black man to death. They caused the problem, then they complain, we were right the whole time. No, dude, we hired these cops because you called this out. Now look where we are.
That's Tim Pool's commentary on the brutal beating of Tyre Nichols, who died in a hospital 3 days after Memphis police officers beat him to the point where he was in critical condition. Now, what's interesting is he is referencing a post-millennial article while making his commentary, and it's abundantly clear that he didn't even really bother to carefully and critically read the article that he's citing there. I'm gonna go to one more clip and I'll tell you exactly what I'm referring to.
I do believe, and maybe people don't want to hear it, Tyre Nichols would be alive if he simply got out of the car, said, okay, I'm sorry, okay, yes, yes, sir. Got on his stomach, put his hands behind his back. He didn't. He resisted, he fought, he fled, they chased him, they pinned him down, and they went nuts. I'm not saying these cops are good guys. I am not saying they're justified. I'm saying when you're dealing with a bear, a grizzly bear, do you scream at it and throw rocks at it? Or do you slowly back away while talking? I bet he had drugs on him. I bet he had some kind of drugs on him. Dude, I'm not trying to impugn his honor or integrity, but if you want to come out and you want to be like, he was a skateboarder, I'm going to be like, I'm a skateboarder. I've been skateboarding my whole life. I can tell you this, skateboarders do drugs.
So I just want to be very clear that Tim Pool is 100% speculating on Tyre Nichols having drugs on him. But even if in the future we learn more details and it turns out that he had something on him, does that give the cops the right to beat you to death because you are in possession of narcotics?
Yeah.
I mean, really ask yourselves, okay? Both right wing, left wing, everybody. I don't care what your political affiliation is. Do you want to live in a country and a society that tells you there is state sanctioned murder by cops if they catch you with narcotics?
Which they didn't.
Which they didn't, again, for the billionth time, yes.
So Anna predicted before we started that I would get angry at this story, and it turns out she was right. So I had seen the video of Pool talking about how they asked for this, and
that Black Lives Matter asked for this.
Yeah, and then we gave it to them. What did they ask for? Well, they certainly didn't ask for a black guy who was completely innocent to be beaten to death by police. So presumably he is saying, and by the way, like the conservatives are already dumb enough without pretending you're even dumber. Like, oh, I don't know what he's talking about. What did they want? He's clearly implying they wanted black cops to be hired. And because black cops were hired, look at the lowered standards got us lower results. And by the way, every right winger now I see on social media, they've already picked up this talking point, is talking about the real problem was lowered standards. So it's really black people's fault. And of course we lowered this. You didn't even know when those cops were hired?
I do.
Thank you.
I know when the cops were hired, and I think that's and that's why I say he didn't even bother to read the Post. But Post Millennial, I think it's a conservative publication, right? But even so, if you carefully read it and critically read it, you'll see that these, like the latest policies that the Memphis Police Department implemented, which did lower the standards, happened after these cops were hired. So let's read a few excerpts from the article that was cited by Tim Pool. Memphis Police Department recruits no longer needed an associate's degree or 54 college credit hours and could just get by with only 5 years of work experience. In 2021 and 2022, please remember these years, they're important. Recruitment was struggling so badly that the department offered $15,000 signing bonuses. Last year, the department also reportedly lowered the fitness requirements, doing away with the timed physical ability test. The department even offered waivers for felons to join the force, according to the New York Post. Fascinating, that's great. Well, these changes wouldn't have had any impact on the cops who beat Tyre Nichols to death because they were hired before the standards were lowered. So let's actually go to another excerpt from the Post Millennial. According to an NBC News report, Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, Emmett Martin III, Desmond Mills Jr., and Justin Smith, these are the cops who beat him, all had been Memphis Police Department officers for just a few years when the fatal beating of the 29-year-old father occurred on January 7th. Okay, so that makes it seem like, oh, maybe they were hired after the standards were lowered, except they specifically reference the cops that were hired the most recently, right? So Bean and Haley in particular have only been on the force since August of 2020.
So that means, by definition, every single one of them was hired before the so-called lowering of the standards.
Let's get even more specific, folks. Let's give you the receipts. Let's give you each individual cop and their actual hire date, okay? Maybe Tim Pool learned something here. Thaddeus Bean, age 24, was hired in August of 2020. Demetrius Haley, age 30, a former corrections officer, was hired in August of 2020. Emmett Martin III, age 30, was hired in March of 2018. Desmond Mills Jr., 32, former jailer in Mississippi and Tennessee, was hired in 2017. And Justin Smith, age 28, was hired in March of 2018. It's almost as if this notion, this narrative, that the lowered standards within the police department leading to this brutal beating and murder really isn't an accurate analysis of what happened here.
And he was talking about defunding the police in other parts of the video. Wait, what part of a $15,000 signing bonus is defunding the police?
Yeah, 100%.
So let me get this right. They poured more money into policing and tried to get people to join it. And then they got folks that weren't involved in this situation at all. And we have no idea if they're good or bad, but we do know they have more money, not less money. So did defund the police win? No, not remotely. Did it win there? No. Did it win nationwide? No. Did we pass a single reform bill, let alone defund the police? Did we even pass a reform bill saying, hey, please do not choke people to death? We actually tried to pass that, and the House did pass it, and the Republicans in the Senate, along with the disgusting conservative Democrats like Manchin, said no, no way, no way, no way. Cops should be allowed to choke black people to death. Well, you tell me that's not what they voted, because they did vote that. They did vote that, because Republicans are despicable monsters. Okay, so now they turn around and go, oh, you see that? We defunded them by giving them $15,000 extra. And that's why we had these. And guys, the whole thing is so explicitly racist. In the beginning, I was amused by it because it's so over the top. Oh, this is what you wanted. And look at these black officers and what they did. What me? Oh, I'm not racist. You know that to this day, some of the dumbest people on the internet say, no, it's okay. I listen to liberals like Tim Pool.
I know, it's amazing, it's amazing. Okay, just pause for a second.
He's like one of the most racist guys in the country. And they're like, oh, no, it's okay, this is the liberals like Tim Pool.
But what's interesting is how Tim Pool, he has this analysis that on one hand seems to go after the cops. I mean, it is interesting that this, they got hired because of lower standards. Don't think that I'm not aware that their race has something to do with part of the reason why he's even saying that to begin with, even though the facts don't bear it out.
100%.
Facts don't bear it out. So in this one case where you have black cops beat a black man to death, well, Tim wants it both ways, where he goes after both parties. Goes after Nichols for, by the way, just completely smearing him and alleging that he might have had drugs on him, even though there's no evidence to prove that point. And also going after the cops about, their qualifications of being hired in the first place.
Yeah, so look, that's actually the part that made me angry when he started going after Tyre Nichols personally. No, I'm not impugning his integrity.
That's exactly what you're doing.
But I'm gonna make up that he's a druggie, because look at him, he's black. No, you look like a stupid druggie who can't get laid and brags about it on the internet, okay? He had no drugs on him. There's literally evidence that he did not have drugs. Those thugs, the cops that went and murdered him, checked everywhere for drugs, including their buddies, who were all sitting there laughing and totally indifferent to his death. They checked and checked and checked to justify their murderous friends, and they found no evidence of drugs. But it doesn't matter. Tim Pool goes, it doesn't matter. So what, he's dead, they murdered him, he's the victim. On the other hand, he's black, must have been a druggie, okay?
One final thing that I'll mention about this, because it's important, and it shows you what the desire, the quest for money and funds does to a person. Tim Pool made a name for himself initially as someone who went to cover Occupy Wall Street. I remember that. And I remember, this video exists, I remember talking about it when I hosted a show with Michael Brooks on Jacobin. We showed the video. He was hassled by cops as he was covering Occupy Wall Street. And he was furious. The cops, the police state, this, that, crying and crying and crying. What a victim, right? Because when there is unjust police behavior that targets people like him, unacceptable. But when you have a very clear case, it's so clear, I mean, you couldn't get clear, of police brutality, police murder, and it affects a black person in Mississippi, in Tennessee, no, it's totally fine. I mean, we gotta find excuses to both, in a weird way, provide cover for the cops, but then also question whether the cops were qualified, probably because of their skin color.
Not probably, definitely.
Yeah.
Look, if you guys don't know how Tim Pool got tiny bit famous that we bothered to talk about him, he used to come on this show and other shows, left-wing shows, as Anna pointed out, when he would go to Ferguson, etc. And back then he was like, I'm with the people and I'm with.
I don't know about Ferguson, he went to Occupy for sure, yeah.
So I think he did, but you guys can confirm that, etc. right? So he goes and pretends to be a left-winger and pretends to be concerned about the plight of black people, etc. So then as a left-winger starts doing a show, it's totally not popular because he's not an interesting person, he's not an intelligent person. And then he stumbles upon a winning solution for him financially, which is racism. And so he became known as the guy on the left who blames black people for everything. So you would watch his show and just rando, out of nowhere, everything would come back to, it's black people's fault. And then the right wingers love that. They were like, and it's the old Dave Rubin, Jimmy Dore model, right? I am on the left, but trust me, it's the left's fault for everything, and especially black people, okay? That's Tim's specialty. To be fair to Rubin and Dore, they don't do that particular specialty as much.
Not yet.
Okay, so this guy is a professional whore. The minute he got money out of that, he was like, ooh, never mind being on the left. I mean, I'll still pretend, right? But remember guys, black guy's fault for dying, and the black guy's fault for killing him, but it's not the cops' fault who are mainly white. Cops are awesome, white people are awesome. It's always the left and black people that are at fault. And by the way, he said he resisted. You can watch the video, the New York Times did a count, but you can do your own count. 71 times they gave him contradictory or confusing commands, which were literally impossible to comply with.
Let me give you an example, you an example. Show us your hands, as they have his hands in their hands, as they have him like under their control, subdued completely. I mean, It was so clear, even with what the cops were saying, the body camera, the footage, it's all there. You can hear it for yourselves. They are bragging about beating him, looking forward to beating him, bragging about beating him after they beat him, right? Like their comments made it so clear that they had this lust for going after people as viciously and violently as they did. But Tim Pool, this is his job. This is what he does, right? This is what he does. Could you imagine how Tim Pool's audience would react if he had factual, reasonable analysis of that case? I'm pretty sure they wouldn't like it. It would really put his whole operation in jeopardy, wouldn't it?
Yeah, look, it's more of an indictment of the country than it is of him, because
100%.
Once he went with the spiel of I'm on the left or I'm moderate, but I'm racist, the viewers poured in. And that is super sad as a statement for the country and what works. So look, we built this gigantic network on the idea that people are decent to one another, and it worked. Unfortunately, the quicker and easier route is just say things that are terrible. And there's a significant chunk of the country that will love you for it. So now he has an audience that every day tunes in for that racism under the cover of, oh, we're just being moderates or something. I mean, if you just looked at things factually, you wouldn't know that everything is black people's fault. Okay, that's the essence of his show. It's disgusting, and the people who like it are even more questionable.
We're gonna take a break, switch gears when we come back. I'm gonna talk to you about how Joe Manchin plans to aid and abet the Republican Party in gutting Medicare and Social Security.
All right, back on TYT here. First of all, make sure you're checking out the progress report. That's our newsletter, and everyone who reads it loves it. Okay, is that an exaggeration? I guess, but I've literally only heard positive things. So tyt.com/newsletter, or just use that QR code right there to sign up for it. tyt.com/newsletter. Okay, the watch list has got a new time starting next week. It starts at 2 o'clock Pacific, 5 o'clock Eastern, so right into the Young Turks. We got a lead-in show now, so that'd be great. And you can spin the wheel to get annual membership right now, tyt.com/spin, and you could get your money back with the prizes that are available there. Everybody wins a prize, and the top one's a $100 gift card from Blue Apron. Check it out at tyt.com/spin. Okay, let me go to members. Jar of Jam Bongino writes in, right, because we call for criminal justice reform since cops are too violent. We instead get violent cops. Oh wait, that logic doesn't actually make sense. He's a total moron. Of course, Tim's almost known for being stupid.
He is, no, it's 100% true.
And so, isn't it funny, like, Jimmy's in a slightly different category. He's in the deranged category. It's not to say he's not stupid, he's just more known for being deranged. But Dave Rubin and Tim Pool have literally made a career out of, I was once on the left, I'm really dumb, and I will say despicable things about about people on the left, whether they're, in the case of Dave, it's gay people and Muslims or whoever he's brought on to attack at that moment, or Tim Pool in the case of black people and any minority. All right, Louis Cypher, no one will ever accuse Tim Pool of the ability to think critically. Well, there you go, exactly, okay? Opinionated said Poole is babbling the drugs line because he read that Tyree had Crohn's disease, and many people who have Crohn's use cannabis to help with pain and appetite. Beanie Boy is scum since the Occupy Wall Street days right up until now.
You wanna know who smokes weed? Everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe not literally everybody, but most people. Okay. Like most people have either tried it or are currently using it now. Who cares? That doesn't give the cops the right to beat you to death.
Like, I mean, talking about records.
These are the freedom guys.
Yeah,
these are the freedom guys.
Yeah.
We're a free society where we justify police murder if the person who got murdered happened to have marijuana on them. Stupid, embarrassing to say the least. I can't stand these people.
I mean, he said he's a skater, skaters do drugs. So if someone who smokes a joint, including Tim, does that mean the cops have a right to beat the living crap out of him until he's dead? What an insane argument. What an insane argument. But yeah, he says it and his audience is like, yes, I knew all black people do drugs while they're getting high themselves. Okay, that's the moron racist in this country. Okay, Rep Cat, the political cat boy, says the cops being black doesn't matter at all. They were in uniform and on the job, therefore they were cops first and foremost.
Because guys, it's the culture, it's the culture within policing.
Absolutely true, because many other cops showed up, white and mixed, etc., and they all thought it was perfectly normal. Gee, I wonder why they thought it was normal. Young. All right, back on TYT, Jen Canana with you guys. Also, Jeff Ron and Max Sims. They just joined by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube. We appreciate it, guys. You make this show possible. All the members do. TYT.com/join. All right, Anna.
Well, we've got some updates on Democratic efforts to help Republicans gut Social Security. Let's watch.
The White House says that they want Congress to pass a clean debt ceiling increase. No negotiations with Republicans at all. Is that a mistake?
Corrupt Democratic Senator Joe Manchin says that it is a mistake to avoid negotiating with Republicans on a must-pass debt ceiling bill that really they are gonna vote in favor of raising the debt ceiling, because he thinks, we really should take a look at Social Security and Medicare, some of the spending, there are some issues there. So in other words, he wants to aid and abet Republicans in gutting Social Security. And today, the New York Times came out with a report explaining what his tactic will be. He says this: we're going to have to bring a group of Democrats together that is willing to work and meet Kevin McCarthy halfway, meaning House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. So look, I think that statement alone is so telling, Cenk, because it ain't just about Manchin. It's about the corporate capture of the Democratic Party and how it's not just a handful of Democrats who are willing to gut social spending programs. There's a bunch of them in the Senate alone, and he wants to get them together. And he's like, you know what? We already got a coalition working in the House. So I want to build that in the Senate too, because both parties want to gut your Social Security and Medicare. That's the reality of the situation.
All right, so look, there are things that are super obvious, but we have to state them as if they're dramatic news, because a lot of the establishment in this country, mainstream folks, good folks, a lot of them, got brainwashed by establishment media. So they believe things that are remotely true, that are hilariously false. So in this case, all these senators take literally millions of dollars from donors. The donors have very specific requests. In fact, when Trump got into office, this is in my book, there's quotes from donors saying, you better pass tax cuts, otherwise we're going to stop donating to you. That is a quid pro quo. They're saying this is exactly what we want. We gave you a couple of $1 million, now we want a couple of $1 billion back. Or in that case, the tax cuts were a couple of $1 trillion back. And they say it out loud in public, they're quoted in the press, okay? So they want redistribution of wealth to the very top, and they literally paid for it. And a lot of mainstream media will, almost all of it will completely ignore that fact. But if they ever touch it at all, they will never mention Democrats. So now wait a minute, I hate Republicans and I don't want a Republican like Trump to win, but I'm being honest with you guys. The media loves conservative Democrats, loves them. And so when they see Joe Manchin, they won't tell you the obvious truth. That guy takes bribes for a living, so when he is told to redistribute wealth, it's not just tax cuts. They need the money from somewhere, otherwise the government's gonna go broke. So they're gonna take it from you. So they're coming to take your Social Security and Medicare, And what did they get called in return for that? It could be, instead of being called the monsters and crooks that they are, the media tells you they are moderate. Well, that sounds so reasonable, doesn't it? Well, here's moderate Joe Manchin looking to rob you of all the money you worked for your whole life. What a moderate position.
There is no reason for Democrats to negotiate with Republicans on raising the debt ceiling. No reason at all.
None.
You wanna know why? Because it's a must-pass bill. If they don't raise the debt ceiling, the global economy and their stock portfolios collapse. They don't want that, okay? And so even Manchin himself, in the context of that New York Times piece, says, I think we all know we're going to vote for the debt ceiling. Okay,
all right,
great.
then why are you negotiating?
Because he wants to cut spending that actually benefits the American people. And what's so gross is how he lies to our faces. He insults us. So same interview, I wanna go back to his conversation with Dana Bash because Social Security and Medicare came up, and look at how he lies, and I'll tell you why he lies. I'll provide the receipts to prove that he's lying. Let's watch.
In my state of West Virginia, 60% of the people that are retired right now live with Social Security and Medicare. To scare the bejesus out of them thinking there are cuts on the line or you're gonna decimate those two, that's not gonna happen. Take that off the board right now and look at ways that we have wasteful spending that we can be held accountable and responsible.
He wants to cut Social Security and Medicare. He doesn't say it there because he's like, oh, the people of West Virginia, same people who would have benefited from a minimum wage hike, same people who would have benefited from the social spending provisions within the Build Back Better agenda that were defeated by Joe Manchin, okay? He claims that he cares about them and they want to maintain their Social Security, except just a few weeks ago, in a conversation with Maria Bartiromo on Fox Business, he was pretty transparent on what he wants to cut. Let's watch.
Let's take the trust funds, whether it's Medicare, Social Security, or Highway Trust. You can't let those go defunct as far as partisan bicameral committees together to look at each one of the trusts and come up with solutions of how you fix it. We're not getting rid of anything, and you can't scare the bejesus out of people saying, we're gonna get rid of Social Security, we're gonna privatize. That's not gonna happen, but we should be able to solidify it so the people that have worked and earned it know they're gonna get it.
So something I want you guys to be aware of and pay close attention to because it's gonna be a talking point. I've already seen Republicans do it and now Manchin's doing the same thing, okay? They try to pretend like, no. We're not gonna cut Social Security and Medicare. We're not gonna privatize it. We're just gonna do things like raise the retirement age, which by the way, is cutting Social Security, okay? It is putting off your retirement because they want to cut Social Security and avoid raising taxes. Right now, the wealthy don't pay the same percentage in Social Security tax as you do, okay? After a certain amount of income, they stop getting taxed for Social Security altogether. You know what you could do if you're really worried about funding the Social Security program? Lift that tax cap entirely. It only benefits the rich, and the rich are terrified of that happening, which is why the rich lobby politicians like Joe Manchin and members of the GOP to get the retirement age up even higher. Right now it's 67, they want it up to 70. That is a form of cutting Social Security. Don't let them lie to you.
The minute you hear we're looking to strengthen Social Security or fix it, those are code words for cut it. Now, you say, well, Cenk, how do I know to trust you? I mean, you say one thing, I just saw Manchin say another thing, that he's looking to fix Social Security. That sounds like maybe he might add to it. Well, there's a thing called facts. They have to actually write bills and proposals, and they have to put them forward. And the proposals he's talking about is to raise the retirement age. And when you do that, so let's take 1 year, right? Hey, the retirement age is 67 now, they move it to 68. You know what happens in that extra year? You do not get the money that you would have normally gotten. That is tens of thousands of dollars. When they move it to 70, as their proposals are, you might miss out on, it depends on your situation, but 50,000 or more. They're literally stealing from you.
Yep.
That is money you put in your whole working life. It's not their money. It's called an entitlement because you are literally entitled to it because you put it in through your taxes. And now Joe Manchin says, I want to rob you. I want to take that $50,000 and put it in the donors' pockets. And every son of a bitch reporter goes, he's a moderate. he's looking to strengthen Social Security. By the way, there is a proposal to actually strengthen Social Security by adding to it. It's a proposal Anna told you about. It's being pushed by Bernie Sanders. They're saying, hey, you know what? If you actually allow the rich to get taxed on Social Security further, it'll solve it. We don't have to lower the retirement age. We don't have to cut. We don't have to do any of that stuff. In fact, we can add to it. And good news, they polled it. And you know what the polling indicates? Over 70% of Americans are in favor of that proposal, even when it's clarified to them that it would raise taxes on the rich. They say, yes, I want it. More than 7 out of 10 Americans. It has a 0% chance of passing. Do you want to know why? Because almost all of our politicians are corrupt. They all take bribes, and the media is paid to trick you and to lie to you into pretending that they're not taking bribes and that they're not redistributing your money to the richest people in the country.
Final thing, Manchin, much like members of the Republican Party, keep claiming that they're so concerned with out of control spending. And you know what? Me too. Me too. I am concerned about out of control spending. I mean, we could look at our defense spending, which wastes a lot of money on all types of military weaponry. In some cases, military weaponry that doesn't even work. Okay, we've spent millions, if not billions, on that. But okay, if they're worried about that because of national security concerns, which I'm not buying for a second, why don't we take a look at other ways that the government wastes money? The Environmental and Energy Study Institute reported that direct subsidies to the fossil fuel industry totaled $20 billion per year, with 80% going toward oil and gas. Which is weird because Chevron reported $72 billion in 2022 profits. Do they really need those subsidies?
No, guys, this is not negotiable. You understand what they're doing? And it's not theoretical, it's happening right now. They're taking $20 billion of our money. You work so hard and then you pay those taxes and it's really painful. Remember, the rich pay almost no taxes, some of them, not all of them. But the reason why Biden, a rare good move that he did, we increased money for the IRS to do audits of the rich, is because above 10 million, it's like 0.01% get audited. I don't have the facts right in front of me, but we did the story before. It is comical. They purposely cheat on their taxes because they know they can get away with it. You have to pay it. You have to pay those subsidies to the richest companies in the world. $72 billion in profit in 1 year is unheard of.
For one oil company.
For one oil company. And you had to pay higher gas prices. They took all the money home and they said, now add insult to injury. Give me 20 billion more from the average man.
Yeah.
And sons of bitches like Joe Manchin help them rob you blind like that.
Yep.
And sons of bitches in mainstream media go, no, he's not robbing you. No, those are not bribes. No, they're not crooks. No, they're moderates. This is the moderate, reasonable position to rob you blind. No, I've had it with mainstream media. I know most of them are totally clueless and they don't know anything about politics or news. Go get a different job. I'm begging you to go get a different job. I'm sick of your corruption. Stop robbing Americans. That's what you do every day. And the media is the getaway driver to that robbery.
All right, well, let's move on to other Democrats who are very concerned about committee assignments and what they did not get assigned to. Let's do it.
This is, as my colleague said, Bakersfield BS. This is all pretextual, and I don't accept the premise that this has anything to do with the conduct of any of the Democratic members. This is merely the weakness of Kevin McCarthy's speakership, that he's so reliant on these extreme members. I mean, how can you, on the one hand, suggest that these are some kind of legitimate basis for unseating Democrats from committees and put someone like George Santos on any committee? The hypocrisy just grabs you by the throat.
That was Adam Schiff, of course, Democratic congressman, who is furious that he was kicked off committees now that the House Speaker is Republican Kevin McCarthy. Now, he wasn't the only one complaining, as you can see in that video. Ilhan Omar, Eric Swalwell, and other Democrats are similarly furious. We're gonna go to some of their statements in just a moment. But before we do, Cenk, this was a story that animated you. And I think it animated you for good reason. Yeah. So go ahead.
Okay, so we're supposed to care about these committee assignments. Why are we having this conversation? Okay, so here's what they're gonna do on committees.
Nothing.
For the next 2 years. Nothing. No, but literally. And by the way, so people always, look, how do you know who's right, who's wrong? Is it Anderson Cooper or is it me or is it Joy Reid? Or is it Tucker Carlson? Who's right, who's wrong? Well, that's why I do predictions. That's why I will tell you ahead of time and you can see it with your own eyes. I guarantee you they will do nothing positive for the next 2 years. Nothing that has anything above 50% popularity in the polling. How's that for a simple prediction? Because I can't guarantee that they won't cut Social Security and Medicare. I can't guarantee that they won't do devastating, horrible cuts that are deeply unpopular in the country, because that's what conservative Democrats and Republicans always do, right? But anything popular, there's a 0% chance. So Adam Schiff, what the hell are you gonna do on that committee? So it's about his personal power. He's like, I have been affronted. I will come on here and raise money because I am now running for a Senate seat in California. I am the victim of Kevin McCarthy. Who cares? What the hell were you gonna do on that committee? Adam Schiff has never proposed anything interesting, ever. Have you ever fought for a $15 minimum wage, universal health care? I once voted for it, right? Get the hell out. Did you ever pressure your colleagues in the Senate to pass it? Well, I would never. Those are my beloved Democratic colleagues. They're much more important than the voters. So stop the yapping about committees. I don't care, no one cares. The main committee is oversight, where they're gonna launch Hunter Biden investigations for the next 2 years. Is Swalwell on that committee? I like Swalwell, but it doesn't matter if Swalwell's on the committee. This is nonsense.
It's just, the thing is, during the first 2 years of Biden's administration, when Democrats had control of both chambers in Congress, the House did pass important legislation. So I don't want to minimize that, but they did so knowing that the legislation would make its way to the Senate where it would die, because Democrats want to maintain that legislative filibuster, right? So it's real easy to do the political virtue signaling of voting in favor of legislation that you know your constituents want, when you know that that legislation is gonna die in the Senate and your donors will still be happy. Like, that is honestly, like, the thing that we need to change first and foremost is how this system is set up entirely. So your committee assignments don't matter if we need literally 60 Democrats who aren't corrupt in the Senate for that legislation to ultimately pass.
Yeah, we do honest reporting and analysis here. So I'm gonna be honest with you guys. There's two categories of Democrats in the House. One is the suckers, and those are the progressives. And I've talked to them, they genuinely believe that it was gonna pass in the Senate.
Oh, come on.
Really?
I
know, it seems unbelievable that they would believe that, but they totally believed it. They even thought Green New Deal was gonna pass.
Come on.
I'm like, are you serious? And those are the guys, they were calling Biden FDR 2.0 the minute he walked in.
The media was doing that, to be fair.
And progressives, they really believed it. They had built this committee and they thought it was a bridge, and Biden and Klain did a brilliant job of suckering them in. Like, come on in. We're gonna have a great wedding. It's gonna be a little red, but come on in. It's gonna be great. We're gonna give you all these progressive things. Biden said on day one at the Super Bowl interview, I'm not gonna do $15 minutes. That one's going to be difficult. Dude, you got in like 3 days ago. How did you decide it was difficult already? It was now the second group, the much, much larger group, 90% of Democrats in the House. They never meant a word of it. This is all games to them. It's all theater. By the way, the reporters also know it's theater. The only people that they don't share the news with, as to the fact that they're all playing in an act, is you guys. They never tell you, by the way, we're all full of crap. None of this is real. We all know it's not gonna pass. And again, there are some reporters that fall into the sucker category, though. And they're always like, I wonder if it passes the Senate. Now, guys, you can tell, again, we tell you what's gonna happen ahead of time. Well, if we were the radicals and we were wrong and mainstream media was so right, how come we are proven right every single time? And we'll be proven right again. Here, watch the committee assignments. I told you, they're irrelevant. Will they pass anything? No, you can see it. 2 years from now, you can come back. You look, weigh them, weigh us. See who was right and who was wrong. We've been doing this for 20 years now.
I'm not as well.
Okay, anyways, so Adam Schiff is missing a committee assignment. And yes, there's the false equivalencies. Yes, it's frustrating. So these guys, and this they're right about. They're like, wait, we kicked off Marjorie Taylor Greene from a committee because she thought Jewish space lasers were starting fires. Okay, you're kicking off Schiff because he impeached Trump. He just did his job. So don't get me wrong, Schiff and Swalwell and Omar are right about the content, the substance of it, right? And what does the mainstream media do? Well, I can't tell. They're both kicked off of committees And I guess it's even in Ilhan Omar's
like
an
tit for tat.
anti-Semite,
Right.
tit for tat, and no one can tell. What am I, a reporter? Am I supposed to figure it out? No, I'm supposed to be neutral. Well, what if both, by the way, what if the Republican and the Democratic positions are wrong? And you're in the middle of those two positions. How's that neutrality working out for you? What an insane standard. All that the media is telling you when they say we're neutral, we say whether they're Democrats or Republicans, we're balanced and neutral. They're saying we don't do the news. We just report political correctness. And the correct thing to do politically is to tell you they're both equally right. That is the worst journalism in the world. So that's what we have to deal with.
We're gonna take a break. When we come back, we've got more news for you, including a story involving Mr. Beast, a popular YouTuber who is getting backlash for doing something pretty good, actually. We'll tell you why when we come back.
All right, back here. Let's go to Super Chat first. Mohit Baki wrote in, I love listening to Cenk, the atheist prophet of politics, and Anna, the atheist prophetess of politics. Not sure where the atheist thing comes in today's show, but God bless you, ironically. Much love, thank you. Benjamin GL wrote in a couple times, I'll read this one. I don't know, Cenk doesn't seem that mad to me. This is mild to calm Cenk. I miss angry Cenk. Quick, someone mention Jimmy Dore. No, no, look guys, I get way angrier about the actual substance of the racism, et cetera, than I do about dumbasses like Jimmy Dore. Cat67 Cat says, if they raise the retirement age again, I just don't see the point in working anymore. Man, that's the whole point of this kind of late stage capitalism. We're like in that garbage container. I always stumble on what to call it in Star Wars. And we're just getting pressed and pressed and pressed in the original Star Wars until they squeeze every penny out of us, every dignity, every piece of respect, every piece of health, until we just are at a breaking point. And they go, okay, perfect, that's it. Now we got them as indentured servants, not for 7 years, but for their entire lives. And then we feed them this tranquilizing drug of mainstream media so that they don't riot, so they don't rebel. So they're told, no, this is good, the status quo is great. Keep taking this drug. Well, watch MSNBC and CNN and read the New York Times and listen to NPR. They'll lull you right back to sleep. Perfect, exactly where they want us. So your frustration is 100% justified. Shinigami writes in, most of the proposed programs and existing programs could be fully paid if we demanded a clear audit on the Pentagon, but that would be against the rich and for the poor. Also 100% correct. By the way, so sometimes conservatives will say, yeah, I agree with auditing the Pentagon or auditing the Fed. So if it's Matt Gaetz, Mike Lee, people that I despise, and they agree to that, the correct answer is taking yes for an answer, okay? But if you do that, you go, okay, good, let's audit the Pentagon. We've got a bipartisan agreement here. The media will turn around from bipartisan is great and the holy grail to, I can't believe progressives want to get together with Matt Gaetz. Bipartisanship sucks. Don't you dare do it. Don't tell me you don't have an agenda. It's dripping from every goddamn word of every article. All right. ACGC writes in, I'll say it again, the police union, AKA the biggest gang in the country, is a national organization. The federal government has every requirement to regulate them.
Yep.
It's total BS that they don't.
Yep, I mean, they had no issues when it came to the rail workers.
Great point. I hadn't thought of that. Rail workers union, no, we'll crush you. You'll have no sick days, unlike it, right?
Because that touches the economy.
Yeah. Police union also touches the economy. Protect our property, okay? And beat the living crap out of anyone within 100 miles of our property, okay? Your union is unhinged, unleashed. Go do anything you want and we'll have your back. It's the only union that this country protects. I'm sure it's a coincidence. Okay. Mel W says, Manchin's current term is almost up. Gee, I wonder if he will be reelected next year. I don't care, and he doesn't care. He's going to get rich either way. He'll just become a lobbyist. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Jen and Anna with you guys. Moondragon, wonderful as usual, gifted 5 Young Turks memberships on YouTube. You guys are amazing. I love how you're a family and you stick together. Anna.
Well, we have a story involving someone doing something good, but getting backlash for it. So let's go.
You pay for my surgery?
Yes.
Seriously?
You know what? Here's $10,000. Make your day even better. Is she okay? We're gonna go fix more people's eyesight. She's squeezing hard.
The wildly popular YouTuber known as Mr. Beast has faced some pretty ridiculous backlash after he decided to pay for eye surgery for 1,000 people so they can see again. Sounds like a great thing, but before we get to the backlash and why people are mad at him about this, I think it's important to understand what he did. So let's get to those details. So the surgery that he paid for is cataract surgery, essentially, right? The surgery, or in the surgery, the cataract, which clouds the normally clear lens of the eye, is vacuumed out. Following this, the cataract is replaced with a new artificial lens, which allows the individual having the surgery to see again. So this 8-minute long video profiles multiple individuals who had the surgery done because of Mr. Beast's, charitable effort here. And so that led to a lot of backlash from people on the left, on Twitter specifically. Now,
the right, by the way.
Well, the right wing is gonna do what it does, okay? But I want to focus mostly on the left because I think there's a way of handling these kinds of stories that makes a lot more sense than attacking an individual. But before we get to that, I want to give you an example of someone who was impacted by this effort. So one man who was blind for 62 years expressed gratitude toward Mr. Beast for the procedure. Another man who lost his job because his vision was impaired was thrilled to be able to work again. A teenage boy who has been blind since his birth was ecstatic to be able to drive for the first time. Look, at the end of the day, regardless of what you think Mr. Beast's motivation was for doing this in the first place, he had a real impact on these people's lives. It is a good thing. I don't care what he's done in the past or what kind of criticism you might have. You can take a look at one thing that someone has done and judge it for what it is. It was a good thing to do, a kind thing to do, but you wouldn't know it based on some of the stuff I've seen online. So I'm gonna give you a few examples, and there's a lot of this stuff. So here's one person who says, he is literally the Antichrist. He's performing our society's equivalent of miracles through these excessive acts of faux generosity and is garnering everyone's undivided love and admiration in doing so. He will start subverting Christ's teachings next and preaching self-action. I mean, this thread was so unhinged that I had to give you a few examples.
That's got to be a right winger, right?
No, he's on the left. And I'll prove it. Let me give you more. He thinks he's on the left. Okay. The reason I dislike him so much is because he paints this disingenuous veneer of altruism and goodwill over content that's primary purpose is to appeal to the senses and satiate the viewer's insatiable appetite for opulence and the material.
Okay, there we go. Back to the left.
Yeah, no, 100%. There's more. He is similar to Andrew Tate, who, by the way, got arrested for human trafficking, okay? In the sense that his content appeals to the most shallow level of reality and is a vehicle through which his audience vicariously lives out their desire for wealth. But Andrew Tate is at least somewhat open about this. Mr. Beast is more subtle, opting to instead unconsciously encourage materialism by associating it with virtue, thereby undoing the widely held notion that there is a fundamental disconnect between capitalism and altruism. Bro, put the textbook down for a second.
100%.
And live in the real world. He did something nice, and attacking someone who did something nice is stupid, in my opinion. There should be a critique on our system that has literal Americans rely on the whims of wealthy people. So instead of going after one person that you seem to be a little envious of, let's just keep it real, It would be far better to make a critique, an actual accurate critique about how our healthcare system is so broken that Americans are living, honestly, lives that are worse than those living in undeveloped countries.
Yeah, all right, I have a lot to say about this. Number one, envy's a hell of a drug. So get off the crack of envy. And it's, here, I got 2 words you should say to Mr. Beast. Thank you. 1,000 people can see now because of what he did. They couldn't see before. There's a kid who never saw, and now he sees the world. Are you insane to criticize that? There's people who are now lost their sight, couldn't work anymore, impoverished, now can go back to work. I can go on and on because there's 1,000 of those stories. They couldn't see it, now they can. And you want to criticize that? Oh, it's something about material world, and I've got verbal diarrhea here, and I think I'm so smart, I'm gonna use all these words to make an incredibly kind gesture look evil? No, you're a loser, okay? And so go cry about that. No, the guy did something wonderful. And I've never heard of Mr. Beast doing anything wrong before. I'm not saying he's an angel, but where are people getting this stuff?
They seem to have a problem with him creating content about this, right?
What did you want him to do? Do it in a cave?
I guess so, I don't know. But like, I don't care. It's not about Mr. Beast, okay? If there's anything to criticize here, it is about systems. It is not about an individual. Okay, Mr. Beast is not a literal antichrist. That is insane. Here's another example.
Well, that was a dead giveaway that you're a lunatic. So, I mean, and there's tons of these people calling him Antichrist because his name is Mr. Beast. God, how mentally weak do you have to be? His name is Mr. Beast and he helped people, so he must be the Antichrist. Okay, all right.
Well, Cenk, apparently he engages in something known as philanthrocapitalism. As this one Twitter user says, philanthrocapitalism, he is exploiting poor people's problems for views and money and giving them basic human needs in return, never addressing why they don't have these in the first place. Now that very last part, I think is a totally fine critique, okay? But Mr. Beast is not, he doesn't do like political analysis. He's not some Marxist, he's not putting out, Marxist content on Twitch and YouTube and stuff, right? He does something completely different. I would have liked to see that critique of our healthcare system and how it leads to that. There was a little bit of it in one of his tweets and a little bit of it in his video, which I'll get to in just a second. But before I do, I think it's important to think of the fact that, well, there's a lot of claim that he's making money off of these efforts, but I looked into this and it turns out that, so he runs a second YouTube channel called Beast Philanthropy, where all profits from ad revenue, merch sales, and sponsorships goes toward various charitable efforts, including a food pantry that he opened in 2021 because he's a really bad guy.
Oh,
like
no,
really
no, you can't. Anna, you don't understand. If you're a bad guy like oil executives and you're destroying the planet and making $72 billion a year like Chevron just did, okay, you're a bad guy, etc. Now you make a lot of money doing good in the world. You fix people's eyesight, you feed them, etc. You're also bad. Wait, why are they both bad? Because some on the left have this insane idea that if anyone's doing good in the world, they should immediately give away all of their money and all of their power and go hide in a cave. That way they can't help anybody anymore, but that guy's gonna feel better because he's not gonna feel as much envy, okay? The critic is gonna feel great. Oh, good, Mr. Beast isn't helping anyone anymore.
And no, the real, honestly, the real fighter here, the real fighters are the ones on Twitter criticizing him because they're actually accomplishing.
Yeah, how many eyes did you fix?
I know.
How many people did you help?
But guys, look, again, my point isn't to, even though we've been pretty vicious toward these tweets and I don't regret it, it's not about any individual. Like I want the left to just be smarter in how they engage in discourse, especially online, because they love attacking one another, they love attacking individuals, not all leftists. I think there are a lot of people on the left who are principled and understand the critique lies in how our systems are set up, right? But when you go after a person trying to do a good thing and you make it about the individual, you start losing the argument, right? It's a massive distraction, it's unnecessary. I think Hassan had a good reaction to this. He critiqued, like he's immediately said, and I think this is the right comment, right? I can't believe we live in a country where people have to rely on a content creator to get a surgery that Honestly, it takes 10 minutes for this surgery, right? And just going back to Mr. Beast and some of what he had to say, one part of his video kind of very briefly touched on how screwed up the system is. Let's watch that real quick.
They can't see, but we have all the technology to fix it.
Yep, half of all the blindness in the world is people who need a 10-minute surgery.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So not only are we helping people here in America, but we're also going to other places around the world.
Because unfortunately, nearly half the population with curable blindness doesn't have access to this surgery. So I wanted to provide this to as many people as possible.
So it would have been really nice for him to elaborate on that further. Why? Why is it, right? He didn't, because he's not a political person or political content creator from what I've seen so far, at least.
Yeah, he's not.
Okay.
I don't even know what his politics is, and I don't want to know, and I don't care. He brought attention to this issue. He is not a political YouTuber, but he brought attention to an issue that desperately needs attention. And it's not just about blindness, guys. Our government does not have universal health care. We're the only developed nation that doesn't have it.
And that is the problem.
And our system costs twice as much. If it didn't cost as much, we could actually cure blindness for all of those people where it is curable in the country right now, just like that. But our government is so brutal that it is choosing not to do what a YouTuber just did. They're leaving it to YouTubers to fix people's eyesight because our own representatives are scum. Let us do the politics. We'll tell you super clearly. Joe Manchin, other Kristen Sinema, all Republicans, Joe Biden, by the way, everyone who is against universal health care is saying, I don't mind those people being blind, let alone the 45,000 people a year that die because they don't have health insurance.
Exactly.
That is how brutal we allow the deaths of a stadium full of people. And you know what? If Mr. Beast saved 1,000 of their lives, I guarantee you some bitter, envious leftists would come out and go, oh, he didn't do enough. And why did he save their lives anyway? Is he trying to make money off of it? Why didn't he just let them die and instead not have any money? That would be great if he didn't have any money. What is wrong with you people? Take the win. It's called thank you. Look into it.
Finally, this quote from Michael Brooks comes up a lot for good reason. And I want you guys to just remember it when you get tempted to attack individuals. Because again, attacking individuals is a distraction. And all it does is lead to infighting and it leads to losing, which honestly the left does a great job with in the United States. Be ruthless with systems. Be kind to people. That's it. That's the whole thing.
Look, guys, last thing. And the Andrew Tates of the world, Alex Jones, Crowder, Temple, all those guys, they make tons of money by spreading poison into our culture. Racism, sexism, etc. Over the top misogyny, hate on top of fear, right? Those are the right guys to fight. Then you take a rando guy who's making a ton of money and using it for good, has a ton of attention, 130 million subscribers, and using it for good, and you attack him? No, do better, do better. Take the win. When someone does something kind with their money, you should applaud that. You should encourage that. What do you want them to do? All be scumbags?
By the way.
Oh, you want them all to take their money and use it for bad things? And then be like, okay, good, at least you're not a hypocrite. You're just a bad guy in everything you do. No, you want them to use their money for good. That's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. It's so simple.
Yeah, I mean, look, and I'll put it in my context, okay? The work I do, the research I do, the segments I put together and produce, I do it because, yeah, I want those videos to do real well, have a lot of viewership, inform a lot of people, and also contribute to my livelihood. That doesn't make you a bad person.
Yeah, well, now that you brought that up, let me add two things to it. One, if you're a leftist, you're supposed to be in favor of people making a living. So what is this weird standard where the Republicans and the right wing should be super rich, but everyone trying to help folks on the left should be impoverished so you feel better? What a weird, insane standard. And for us, I view every video as a message in a bottle. And so we reach, on an average month, 400 million views, okay?
We're bad people, and we're literal antichrists.
That is 400 million messages in a bottle to do the right thing and not the wrong thing. And if you say no, You shouldn't do that because you make money, and Bart, the audio guy, makes money, and John makes money, and the editor makes money, but none of you should have a living. Well, then we can't do the show and nobody ever gets the message. Would that make you happier?
For some of them, yes. Absolutely.
For some of them, they would love that. So just look in the mirror and be honest with yourself. But anyway, Mr. Beast is not doing political messages. He's not doing messages about it. But what he is doing is reaching a broader audience that is non-political. 130 million people, a lot of them very young. And what's the lesson that they just got? Be decent to others. Isn't it wonderful when you can give them a miracle of eyesight? Hey, if you've got money, do something good with it. Make people happy. That's the message he put in a bottle. Again, the correct response to that is thank you.
All right, that does it for the first hour, but we're not done talking about healthcare. When we come back, Ben Shapiro had a curious take on obesity and life expectancy here in the United States. We'll address that with actual data and facts. And then later, we'll lighten things up, I think. No promises though. Come right back.
Indisputable has been named the fastest growing news TV show in the United States of America, compared to all shows on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and roughly 30 others. What do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable. Donald Trump radicalized citizens. He's the chief terrorist. Republicans still want you to think that critical race theory is the greatest evil that can happen in K through 12 education. It's not even taught. I guarantee you this, David. If he would have taken a knee during the national anthem to bring awareness to the need for more money for cancer research in America, he would not have had that response. It was the fact that he took a knee for black folk and brown folk. You rather pick the voters because you're scared of the voters picking the politicians. It frightens you. But we coming. When you are in a privileged position, equality looks like oppression to you. The Karenicity runs deep in this one. We provide a mirror for reflection and a mirror for correction.
So what if I have 35? Don't hit me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
So let's put up the graphic of this Karen in peak performance. Boom. They want anarchy so they can start creating their own rules.
Can you share with me some examples?
When they were running around during the terrorist attack on January 6th saying hang Mike Pence. So those are the people I'm talking about. That's a problem, correct? You work for Mike Pence, stand up for the guy. Do not allow the ideology of politics to evaporate the humanity that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, so I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reformed in this country, so I won't stop. And you won't stop either.
Universal health care, raising the minimum wage, doing something about climate change and gun violence and an unjust justice system that locks up black and brown folks. We're not going for the okie doke no more.
I think Nina Turner is the leader of the progressive movement right now.
It is absolutely a sin and a shame to be in the 21st century in America and having people who are elected to office not only try to separate us, but also use public policy to make it harder to vote.
The questions that we get asked is what you just, how you gonna pay for it? I say, oh, we gonna pay for it the same way we pay for the tax cuts. That's how we gonna pay for it. We gonna pay for it in the same way that we give military industrial complex contractors. That's how we gonna pay for it.
If standing up for universal health care or Medicare for all is wrong, Jink, I don't want to be right. If believing that working people deserve to have paid family and medical leave is wrong, I don't want to be right. If wanting everyday people of this nation to live a good life is wrong, then I don't want to be right.
And we are being tested whether we have courage enough, conviction enough, people power enough to stand up and do what is right for ourselves and generations yet unborn.
I'm Nina Turner, and I am unbought and unbossed.
When I started, TYT had already been around for 5 years. It was very possible that it was just gonna crumble and fall apart.
long before I started working here, I listened to years of TYT.
I came in as a college kid at SC. I was trying to get into broadcast.
I was in a family that thought we were liberal Republicans.
I wish I could sit down with people and give them the opportunity to get to know me on a deeper level.
We moved generations. Am I proud of that? Hell yeah, I am.
I am a dangerous human being. I am scary. I am threatening. I'm Darth Vader.
Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna and Jeffrey Tucker with you guys. He hit the join button below the video on YouTube. Jeffrey, thank you, appreciate it, brother. And all of you members out there. Everybody can do it at tyt.com/join. All right, Anna.
Well, we've got some more on healthcare in America, so let's discuss. Ben Shapiro had a curious tweet regarding healthcare in America where he looked at obesity rates and life expectancy and thought, looks like we're winning. So before I get to the tweet, it's important to take a look at what he embedded in the tweet, which was this chart. It shows obesity rates based on country, and at the very top, of course, you see that the United States is #1. In fact, we have the highest obesity rate with 40% of adults overweight. Now notice that the countries lower on the list have an asterisk, and that's because they collect their data based on self-reporting. I do think that it's important to know the difference in methodology in collecting that data because self-reporting is a little less reliable than other means of collecting that data, okay? But with that said, at the bottom of the list, and I do believe that this is an accurate outcome, is Japan. They have a very low rate of obesity at 4.2%. Okay, so with that said, Ben Shapiro says this, one key takeaway. America is amazing at keeping obese people alive. The overall US life expectancy is 79.11, so that's years of course, despite an obesity rate of 40%. France is at 83.13 despite an obesity rate nearly 60% lower. Japan is at 85.03 with an obesity rate about 90% lower. Okay, well, important to note that the World Bank's analysis of life expectancy in 2019, so before the pandemic, was fascinating because the United States of all these countries ranked at 54 for life expectancy, behind countries like Lebanon, which was much higher on the list, believe it or not, Bosnia, and even Bahrain, which was at 50. We were at 54. So Jake.
Okay, so first, on a lighter note, I now understand what happened to me. America's #1, Turkey's #6. What am I gonna do? Okay, so now on to the main issue here. I don't get his tweet. He's like, we're more obese, so we die younger. And okay, well,
I think,
how does that prove that our healthcare system is good?
I think what he's trying to argue is that given how high the obesity rate is, it's amazing that the average, right? Like life expectancy is 79 years old.
But it's not that good. And even his own tweet proves it because other countries are at 83 and 85. That means in Japan, they're living 6 more years than we are.
Yeah.
How does that prove that our healthcare system is better?
I don't know. Look, I read the tweet last night and I was a little stoned, so I thought maybe I'll read it in the morning. It'll make more sense. I'm just keeping it real, you know. I know myself. I'll read it in the morning, and maybe there's a point. Because look, I try to have an open mind. Maybe there's a point to be made here. But no, I read it in the morning, and I was like, this still makes no sense. And if you actually look at the data, we are not doing well. Okay, our healthcare is the most expensive, meaning it costs the country the most. and we have the worst outcomes. And I want to actually provide the data and the evidence that bears that out. So Ben is praising America for having an even shorter lifespan than we already do, considering our high rates of obesity, even though our life expectancy is 3 years less than the OECD average. It's 3 years less than the OECD average. Okay, that's important to know. That was left out of the tweet, probably intentionally. Now, it speaks to America's focus on sick care, right? So not preventative care. In fact, if you look at Cuba, our life expectancy is very similar to that of Cuba's, and Cuba has no resources, none, right? And they know they have no resources, so they focus all of their medical attention on preventative care because that is cheaper to treat. Whereas in America, preventative care is costly for people, especially if they don't have health insurance, so they forego seeing a doctor. So I wanna just quickly address the obesity thing for a second. When you have health insurance, let's say it's provided by your employer like it is for me here at TYT, you feel confident in going to the doctor every year for your annual checkup, for your blood test to make sure everything is okay. I do it every year, like clockwork. And I learn things about myself and my body that I otherwise would not know. So for instance, I have high cholesterol. That information allows me to change my behavior to keep my cholesterol under control, okay? It's hereditary, so it is what it is. It's unfortunately the card I was dealt. On the other hand, when it comes to things like obesity, remember, I think there's a tendency to assume that all obesity is caused by overeating, being irresponsible with your diet. And for some people that is the case, right? But for others, like let's say you have a thyroid condition that leads to extreme weight gain, but you don't have health insurance and you don't even know you have that thyroid condition. You get what I'm saying?
Of course.
So like having that affordable health care, having the ability to go see a doctor every year without fear of surprise bills and astronomical costs is so important, even in keeping obesity rates under control or lowering obesity rates, in my opinion.
Okay, look guys, it doesn't really matter too much why we're obese. And is it partly because we're eating the wrong things? Definitely, okay? Is it partly because of different situations? Sure, like everybody has a different story. So don't go around judging people. I just want to be clear about that. Now, there is one part of our diet that is actually related to the government, and that's the fact that we put high fructose corn syrup in everything. And why do we do that? Because we give subsidies to farmers to produce that corn. It gets turned into high fructose corn syrup. So our government subsidies created that problem in the first place. By the way, Republicans love those subsidies. They claim that they hate subsidies overall, but when it comes to people in red states, they're like, and especially if they're giant agriculture companies, funnel the subsidies over to them. And countries that have less high fructose corn syrup have much lower rates of obesity. So now, of course, again, the right wing doesn't want to talk about that. I don't want our taxpayer money going to that. Now, but the most important part of all of this is universal health care produces the results that Anna talked about. All of those countries have universal health care. They all live longer than us. We do not have universal health care. In this country, we call that Medicare for all. And we live 6 years less than people in Japan do. We're literally robbed of 6 years of our lives. Okay, say that
on average.
Yeah, say that a couple of years is due to diet and other factors in Japan, right? Say a couple of years, maybe a year is due to high fructose corn syrup. But that still leaves 3-4 years of our lives that we lose because our government will not do what every other developed nation on earth does, which is universal health care. And guess who hates the idea of universal health care? Because it might cost them a nickel, Ben Shapiro.
And look, the real issue here is he's perpetuating a long-standing talking point and a myth by, I even hesitate to say the Republican Party, because at this point it's not limited to the Republican Party. You see a lot of this messaging coming from some corporate Democrats as well. And it's this notion that everything is based on personal responsibility, right? So he's focusing on obesity rates because he wants to make a point about how your behavior is what's at fault here, as opposed to a system that leaves people uninsured and unable to get the health care that they need, okay? So one other thing I want to quickly bring up is a study that was just done by the Commonwealth Fund. They did an analysis of healthcare in the United States relative to other developed countries. And the results are not good, to say the least. So in 2020, there were nearly 24 maternal deaths for every 100,000 live births in the United States, more than 3 times the rate in most of the other high-income countries we studied. So was it the pregnant women's fault? Was it their fault that they died during their live birth? I mean,
I thought these guys were pro-life, by the way. So why aren't we pouring resources to fix that?
Yeah.
Why aren't we doing universal health care coverage, which we know would fix that? Oh, because, and this isn't about Ben Shapiro. Like, so he just represents the rich. That's the whole point of Ben Shapiro's show is the rich are awesome and we take too much from them and we should take it instead from you, the middle class and the poor. And if you live a couple of years less, who cares? Don't touch the rich. But in this case, remember, on average, all of those countries, not 1 or 2 random countries, it's dozens of countries that have all done it, and all their system costs half as much as our system costs. So actually, rich people would save money too. So why are they doing this? Healthcare companies and drug companies have bought off our entire government. And so they funnel in billions of dollars in campaign donations, otherwise known as bribes. By the way, Ben Shapiro loves money in politics. We had a debate about it. Even his own crowd booed him on that one. They loved everything else, but when he was like, oh, I love, politicians should get millions of dollars from corporations. And I bet that doesn't affect them at all. Boo, right? Because it's absurd. We're all literally dying so healthcare companies and drug companies can make more money off of us.
And just to give you the comparison of how much we spend on healthcare relative to other countries that have far better outcomes, let's take a look at graphic 8 here. We'll show you a chart. And the top line that you see there is the United States. We spend more on healthcare than all those other countries, okay? This shows that the US spent 17.8% of its entire GDP on healthcare. The OECD average is 9.6%. Health spending in the United States was 3 to 4 times higher than in South Korea, New Zealand, and Japan, which all have universal healthcare systems and far better health outcomes. None of that surprises me, because if you're not in the top echelons of financial wealth, you experience what this healthcare system really is. So look, Ben and I got into a debate recently on his show on this topic. It hasn't been released yet, it'll be released soon. But something that he said to me, and it's something that I hear from conservatives and corporate Democrats all the time. Well, we actually have the best healthcare because of the outcomes on treatments, like cancer treatments and things like that. That's absolutely true. We do. We have the best health treatments in the world if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, you're screwed. Either you go bankrupt because you have to go in debt, or you just decide, I don't want to put my family through that financial stress. I'm just not going to go through the treatment. And a lot of Americans make that decision.
Here, I'll give you the decoder ring for Ben's show. Once you realize that everything he says is from the perspective of someone really wealthy, it all makes sense. You go, oh, I get it. That doesn't help the average American at all, but it would really help the rich or specific folks in the rich, like in the case of drug company executives, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why in that particular case, he says, what do you mean we have the best healthcare in the world? For people who are really, really rich. For the rest of you, you're gonna live less years than all those other developed countries. But my show's not directed to you, he's basically saying. I don't care if that happens to you. In fact, I'm going to blame you for it and I'm gonna call you fat. So you see, get off of rich people's, you know what, because it's your fault. That's the point of his show. So hey, if you like that, if you like greedy, rich people fanboying, all right, then Shapiro's show is perfect for you. You'll love it.
All right, let's go to break. When we come back, we'll talk about how the Republican establishment is actually hoping that Donald Trump dies. I'm not kidding, that is a literal story. That and more when we come back.
I'm gonna lighten things up in this social break. Let's go to YouTube members now. My collection Stella says, hair looks great, Anna.
Thank you. Beautiful hair. It looks a little wild today, no?
Apparently not, because there's tons of comments about it.
Maybe they like wild hair.
Renee Lamore, Anna's hair is beautiful. I should curl my hair like that. I don't know, there's more on Twitch, but I can't find them right now. Anyways, now that I'm on Twitch, Varai Hanvier Dragon, sorry brother, says Jank knowing 2 languages but forgetting the words trash compactor is peak Jank. That's really funny.
Nerd.
Okay, agreed on all of that. So it's funny, Mewtwo appeared, says basically the same thing Anna said probably around the same time. Yeah, Mr. Beast is not the problem, it's the system. That is exactly right. Bohemian Dragon Tiger Lily 48 says, wait, I thought we wanted the rich to be generous instead of greedy pigs. I'm so confused. So by the way, notice the 2 stories we did back to back. We're almost back to back. Mr. Beast, very wealthy now, but does the right things. Great, wonderful, there's nothing wrong with rich people. Ben Shapiro, very wealthy, that's not the issue at all. The issue is when you say, no, the wealthy should get more wealthy at everyone else's expense. That's the problem, okay? See, Octo Squiddies, a lot of good comments from you I've seen before, but I don't quite agree with this. Wrote in, I think we can separate the good act of providing healthcare for a few people while simultaneously criticizing his business model of creating philanthropy as a service. No, actually, I totally disagree with you. If people create the business model of philanthropy for service, and then they wind up doing philanthropy and get really rich off it, but they're actually helping all those people and it's not a scam, I love that business model. Well, I mean, why should people only make money from doing terrible things in the world like oil and drug companies that are overpricing their drugs, et cetera? I mean, we go on and on and on. Look, guys, here's the way to think about it. If people can make money by doing good things in the world, they'll want to do it more, even if it's just for the profit motive. Then you'll have many people doing lots of good things in the world. I don't care why they're doing it, as long as they're doing good things. So that's my take on it. Nipsey Dragon says, so frustrating, I'm only 46 and I had to pay for my cataract surgery because I'm not old enough and was not blind enough for healthcare to pay for anything. Our system is awful. That is 100% right, and it's the system that should take care of it, and that's the fight we fight every day. All right, more. Clifton Lewis and YouTube, back to YouTube members. Are Jank and Anna fired up? I guess, LOL. Deanne Loso said, my husband and I are both on Social Security and Medicare. We barely make enough to make ends meet. Right now, we can't buy groceries until we get paid on February 3rd. How are we going to survive? I'm pissed. And you should be pissed. And you shouldn't do the things that the right wing do when they're pissed, but you should be very active in politics and primary every corporate Democrat, bring more progressives in, hold progressives accountable. It's really hard work, but we have no choice to do it. The only other option is surrender, and we're never gonna do that. All right, back on TYT. I'm just gonna read one YouTube comment, YouTube member comment, because it's fun. Mary Clam wrote in, love you both, and Anna's always right.
Thank you.
I don't even know about what, but apparently it's always, so it doesn't really matter.
Not always. I mean, it's important to acknowledge when I'm wrong, and I did not think Russia was gonna invade Ukraine. I was definitely wrong about that.
We found one. We found one, okay,
yeah.
out of 15 years. All right, let's do it.
All right, oh yeah, the story is insane. Let's do it.
He has spoken to many Republicans who will put on the red hat and campaign for Trump and go up on stage with him, and then the next day say, I can't wait for this guy to die. That's a direct quote.
Oh wow, turns out the Republican establishment wants Trump to suffer the same fate they envisioned for every marginalized community. Let's hear more.
And so I was taken aback by how often I heard this. I thought it was kind of a morbid, dark joke at first, but I heard it so often that it started to become clear that this was actually what a lot of Republicans believe, and it just speaks to the desperation in the party right now.
So that was Atlantic writer McKay Coppins, who wrote the following in his recent piece, quote, "In my conversations with Republicans, I heard repeatedly that the least disruptive path to getting rid of Trump, grim as it sounds, might be to wait for his expiration."
Damn. Jesus, man, they are so much more brutal than our side.
And look, he also writes this, because this part's important. It really shows you the cowardly nature and the lack of strategy by the GOP. Their rationale was straightforward, meaning their rationale for literally wanting him to die. The former president is 76 years old, overweight, appears to maintain the diet of a college freshman, and believes, contrary to all known science, that exercise is bad for you. Why risk alienating his supporters when nature will take its course sooner or later?
Damn. Okay, Jesus, they're brutal. But by the way, you'll be waiting 20 years, man. That guy's never going anywhere. And so it's amazing. He never does any exercise other than the golfing. That part is true. We covered the story. He thinks that if you exercise, you take away energy from your life and that you'll die sooner. The problem is I don't want to repeat it too many times because the right wing will start to believe it, okay? And they'll stop exercising completely, they'll fall apart at the seams. Anyway, waiting for someone to die is literally the weakest strategy I have ever heard.
1000%. 1000%.
Apparently there's not a single man in the Republican Party.
But you know, it's interesting because a lot of times when it comes to strategy, I find progressives and those on the left comparing Democrats and Republicans, right? Oh, why don't Democrats do what Republicans do? But it's a lot more difficult because the base for the Democratic Party is not really united in what they're demanding. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like there are highly educated, well-to-do Democratic voters who are definitely not on board with the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. Like there isn't the solidarity necessary to make the Democratic politicians afraid of us. You get what I'm saying? Whereas with the Republican Party, honestly, the base is still very much supportive of Donald Trump. And so the Republican establishment is terrified of alienating them, because if they do, they're in a lot of trouble when it comes to these elections.
In fact, there's a poll out today that showed, hey, DeSantis has got a big lead on him in the primary, but it comes with a giant asterisk, which is that if Trump runs as a third party candidate, an independent, 20% of Republicans would vote for him, which means that a Republican would have no chance of winning the national election, okay? And Trump might do it, which scares the hell out of the Republicans and makes them concede to everything that he wants, even though he would actually get killed by DeSantis in a primary if that poll is right? So he holds them hostage. Our side, I mean, look at the juxtaposition, right? On the other hand, progressives, scared to death of making a demand of corporate Democrats. The minute that, and to be fair to them, the minute they do, everyone in media yells at the top of their lungs at him, "You monsters! You're causing lack of unity. We had a perfectly good corporate bill where we were going to take billions of dollars of your money and give it to corporate friends. You monsters, stop it." And honestly, look, we're in the honesty business. It works. And progressives get scared.
They do, yep.
And they back away and they never use their power. To this moment, they haven't used their power. Okay, and by the way, they get more animated. You can notice this with your own eyes, and you'll see it now in these next 2 years. Progressives get way more animated when they're out of power, because then it's safe to be able to say the things that you say, because it's not really going to have an effect on legislation. The minute the Democrats are in power and it can affect legislation, all the progressives go super quiet.
Yep.
And so there's one other difference. Bernie is the clear leader of the progressive movement and has been for a long time, right? He has universal love among progressives. Even when we get frustrated with him on different things, we still love the guy.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
Everyone on the Republican side, I don't mean the voters, right? But the politicians, etc., everyone in power hates Trump. Isn't that interesting?
No, they do 100%. In fact, I want to go to the next video. So here's more from Coppins.
It was striking how consistently I heard the party needs to move on from Trump. We need to find a way to get rid of Trump. That we're way better off with Trump. But then when I would ask, okay, what's the plan for that to happen? It would immediately move into hypotheticals. Maybe he'll get indicted and his legal problems will subsume him. Maybe he'll get bored and drop out. Maybe he'll lose his attention. Some people, clung to this long-held delusion that maybe he would become a different person and bow out graciously and make room for the next generation of Republican leaders. Contrary to everything we know, what the consistent through line was, though, was that they all wanted him gone, but nobody wanted to confront him directly. There is just this fear that if they go after him or if they try to rally around somebody else, they'll spark a backlash from his base.
No, it's amazing. They do hate him. And I've known that for a long time, right? So when I was in Pennsylvania, not last year, but the year before, to debate Ben Shapiro, before the Pennsylvania Chamber of Commerce. I mean, these are all business people, these are all conservatives. Everyone I talked to couldn't stand Donald Trump. They were willing to say that privately, would never say it publicly.
Yeah, which of course gives you the billionth time in a row evidence that politicians are liars, okay? And then that one's not just for Republicans. But I want to go back to the Bernie thing for a second, because look, progressive voters love Bernie, but conservative voters love Trump. So I'm not talking about the voters, I'm talking about leadership, pundits, legislators, etc. Universally, Bernie is beloved by those leaders. And if anyone said, "Oh, I'm just waiting for Bernie to die," they would be immediately expelled from the progressive movement. Everyone would think it was the worst thing that anyone has ever said, right? Almost every Republican leader behind the scenes says it about Trump.
Oh, I can't wait for him to die.
I can't wait for him to die. Gee, can you see the gigantic difference? Okay, so now one more thing. They were waiting for all these different things to happen, right? Maybe he dies. God damn it, he won't die. And this is not me talking, this is Republicans. He's quoting Republicans. By the way, every reporter, we covered this story when he was president. I think it was Ben Smith, but I'm not positive. Wrote a story about behind the scenes, every Republican saying, we wish we'd get rid of this son of a bitch, okay? And so in terms of all their hopes though, the second thing they hope for, well, maybe he'll get indicted and that'll get him. Well, I just did an interview with ex-Tea Party member Joe Walsh. Check it out on The Conversation. And he says what is totally logical. Every single Republican he talks to says, no, if he gets indicted, then I'm definitely supporting him.
No, it fires them up even more.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he becomes a victim that they want to support.
Yep. If he gets indicted, and they're gonna, if they had indicted him several years ago, that loser Merrick Garland, they could have had time to go through the process, and if he's convicted, well, then you got a different situation, right? But they're gonna indict him in just enough time to give him perfect momentum for the primaries.
Yeah.
If they indict him at all.
But they're not going to.
So those are your two terrible choices. Don't indict him, he gets away with everything, or indict him at a time where you're not gonna be able to convict him in time and you're gonna help him in the primaries. Democrats are such losers, it's unbelievable. So, but the bottom line is, no, the legal system is definitely at this point, especially with the limited time, not going to take care of Trump. And there is one other option that they will not consider under penalty of law. You could fight him and you could win, but I know you're Republicans, so you're all pathetically weak. It doesn't even cross their mind. I wonder if we could beat him. No, you can't beat him because you're all losers. That's why Lindsey Graham comes out last night groveling, go, hey, Trump,
No, I love this. So just to juxtapose what is being talked about privately to what Lindsey Graham said publicly on cable news, let's watch him kiss Donald Trump's ass, because he has made his political calculation, and it is to support Trump because he does think Trump is likely to win again. Let's watch.
Here's why I'm with Trump. I know the downside of Trump, but let me tell you about the upside of Trump. There are no Trump policies without Donald Trump. All these people who are very talented, I don't think you could do what he did, and I want him to have another shot.
So, I mean, look, he went on this like long rant about like, oh, Trump accomplished this and that, whatever. All of that stuff is irrelevant. What is relevant here is that Lindsey Graham has made his bet.
Yeah, so Lindsey Graham is a bellwether for sniveling cowards. So every once in a while, he'll poke his head out and criticize Trump and see how it does. He's like, okay, how does it do?
Same with McCarthy.
Yeah, and then, but McCarthy, everyone knows McCarthy. Well, no, actually, McCarthy's a mixed bag too. You're right. That's a good example. McConnell is a little bit tougher on Trump, still scared, still not really fighting him, but everybody knows that McConnell hates him. But you're right, McCarthy and Lindsey Graham, every once in a while they're like, Trump bad? How does it do? Oh, no, the base still loves him. Oh, I mean, Trump is the best.
Let me tell you what's good about Trump. Without Trump, there's no Trump policies.
Bravo. Did it take you all night to come up with that line? Okay, by the way, I want to be clear about this. Fairest show in America. There is actually a reason why the base loves him. And it's not just racism. Yes, there's all of that hatred, fear stuff, that's true. But on top of that, there's a lot of people who like him because he hates the establishment.
Yeah.
And so that's why the establishment is flummoxed. They don't understand. They're like, I don't get why they like him.
Because they
and I don't know how to defeat him.
Because they hate you.
No, that's exactly right. And by the way, that is why they are incapable of defeating him. Because the only way to defeat Donald Trump is to be a better populist. You can't out-establishment him. People, especially in the Republicans, they despise the establishment. So that's why the Rubios of the world are like, I don't get it. I pleasured more donors. I thought that was gonna work. I pleasured all the donors I could find. It still doesn't work. That's because they hate that. And by the way, on that portion of the Republican base, I give them credit. Okay?
I do.
You picked the wrong guy. Trump's in for personal corruption. You picked the wrong guy, but your instinct to be against these corrupt politicians is correct.
All right, let's go to our next story where we will immediately go back to criticizing conservatives. So, teachers in Florida are literally emptying their classroom libraries and even covering up their book collections for fear of facing felony charges and jail time. Again, this is in Florida because of Republican policies. Republicans who claim they hate censorship and want to value freedom of speech. Now, earlier this month, teachers in Manatee County, Florida were sent directives from the school district to remove or cover all classroom libraries until all materials can be reviewed in order to comply with the new rule voted on by the Florida Department of Education. By the way, similar things are happening in Duval County. So House Bill 1467, which took effect as law in July, mandates that schools' books be age appropriate, free from pornography, and suited to student needs. Books must be approved by a qualified school media specialist who must undergo a state retraining on book collection.
I mean, why don't you just call it the propaganda department?
It's amazing. There's more. The education department did not publish that training until January, leaving school librarians across Florida unable to order books for more than a year. Now look, the schools, one might argue they're overreacting, but they're not, because they're worried about prosecution if one of their books is deemed inappropriate for the students. Now, how do you determine what is or is not inappropriate? Like, what is the standard for pornography, right? Because I've seen conservatives argue that books contain pornography when there is no pornography in it, right?
And by the way, 100% of the time, it will be something that is LGBTQ that they declare pornography. For like straight relationships, it doesn't even occur to them. It's like we've discussed many times, and there's book versions of this, but like Hooters, they're like, oh yeah, way to show your breasts and your ass. Yeah, I want my son to see that. That's not at all sexual. Oh, two gay people exist, sexual, over-sexualized.
So they're worried about content that's harmful to minors. Okay, I have to say, what's really interesting to me is, like, I don't believe this objective at all. Like, I don't believe that their objective is in any way genuine. I think that this is a form of censorship. I think this is a way of gutting public education even further, because it's made life even more miserable for public school teachers who are already overworked, underpaid, overwhelmed. So they're like, now I have to worry about potentially being prosecuted. No, I'm done. So teachers are doing exactly what conservatives wanted. They're quitting their jobs. Okay, at a time when there's already a teacher shortage, by the way. And so it's so incredibly frustrating to see this play out, while I feel the media perpetuates this claim that conservatives are more interested in protecting free speech as opposed to the left. Now look, there's all sorts of annoying language policing and stuff happening on the left that I personally can't stand and I wish wasn't happening at all. But to compare that to the real censorship that's happening in this country, where literal books that have no problem at all are being banned in school libraries because conservatives are making a big deal about it, like that should be the whole censorship conversation in the country, and it's not. It's so frustrating.
Look, they don't care about over-sexualizing at all. I was just in all over Florida, Fort Myers, Tampa, you name it, all the west side of Florida. I drove almost the entire thing, right? Nothing but billboard after billboard. Adult superstore, massage, you know what kind, right? It's on every highway nonstop, right? And they're like, yeah, attaboy, adult superstore, let's go do it, massage, right? And then they're like, oh, 2 gay people, they're over-sexualizing. Come on, guys, get real. By the way, everybody who lives in Florida, you know I'm telling the truth. You've seen it too, and you know.
They know.
They know. And have you ever met right-wing men? You want to talk about over-sexualized? Okay, come on, guys. You're really pretending that you have concerns about this? Okay, get out of here.
Yeah.
And so anyway, what's the bottom line of this? The bottom line is, now they don't have books in the library. They're shutting down libraries.
Let's go to the video because I want to actually provide you some footage of what some of the classrooms look like, where they're, look at that, they got rid of the books. Because all the books need to be reviewed by some rando who has to go through a training before he or she can review the books to see whether or not they're appropriate for the students. Really curious what the standards are, right?
Yeah, no.
None of that has been disclosed publicly, of course. And look, we've been covering similar stories for months now. And there have been examples of books that were deemed unacceptable because of pornographic material. And the pornographic material they're referring to is a couple who shared a kiss.
Oh, by the way, just randomly.
Your kids are on the internet.
Yeah, I know, come on,
They've
guys,
seen
who are
way
you kidding?
worse, okay?
Who are you kidding? No, well, they're just trying to brainwash the kids. It's super obvious. I'll come back to that in a second. But I like how The Last of Us, I don't know if you've been following it. It's a show on HBO.
I have, it's very good.
Okay, I'm gonna do a tiny spoiler alert here, okay? So there's this survivalist, obviously right-wing guy.
That was the best episode.
I know, and he turns out to be gay in the show.
Yeah.
And Sebastian Gorka was like, this is outrageous. He's been over-sexualized. Okay, anyways, I don't think he used the word exact, over-sexualized, but he was livid that the character turned out to be gay. Gee, I wonder if they hate gay people. Why does it bother you that the survivalist, don't tread on me guy was gay? Why does that, I don't get why that bothers you. Oh, that's right, because you're hateful and your whole party's hateful. So which leads me to this conclusion. Look guys, you can't live in a red state. And I know a lot of you guys live in red states and I feel terrible for you. So we've got our own issues in blue states. California has this Democratic Party machine that we hate, we talk about, we criticize all the time. So nobody's perfectly innocent. But in red states, they do things like this. They're like, oh, we're gonna brainwash your kids. So we're removing all the books from the library, anything that would actually educate them and get them a real education, the pillar of Western civilization, the thing we're pretending to be in favor of. No, we're gonna destroy it. And we're gonna try to fill their minds with hateful propaganda instead. I would never subject my kids to that. And I swear to you, my heart breaks for you if you live in a red state and you got kids. Absolutely breaks for you.
Yep. Well, the same folks who are concerned about sexual content and grooming taking place in public schools are also now demanding that female athletes provide detailed information about their menstrual cycles. So we've got that fun story and more coming right up.
Can't let that happen.
All right, back on TYT here. Let's go to YouTube Super Chat for a second. Lars Nielsen says, watch how Macron's proposal to raise the retirement age by 2 years prompted millions of French people to protest and call for strikes. Would that make the politicians in Congress think twice before doing the same thing? Lars, I appreciate the Super Chat, and we were talking about Social Security and Medicare earlier in the show. Unfortunately, as we covered the story of the French strikes yesterday on the show, we explained, for the moment being, that it has no chance of working in America. Our politicians don't care about us at all. Look, in the first chapter of my book, and you can get it at pre-order at tyt.com/justice, explains dozens of polls that show the country's overwhelmingly progressive. Polls ranging from 2/3 to 97% in favor of proposals. None of them pass. If you can't pass a proposal that has 97% popularity, you don't live in a democracy. So they'll never ever care. The number one issue is corruption and only corruption. If you don't fix the corruption, progressives in Congress are gonna do these silly dances that they do, and it's not gonna make any goddamn difference. But they won't listen. They won't listen to reason, because challenging people on corruption is impolite, and it's really hard to do, and just from a personal and psychological level. All right, well, what am I gonna do? That's what we sent you for. But we don't see it. Anyway, speaking of which, let me see if I could find the right thing here. Oh, Emre Yurtas also asked, why is the United States the only country to not have universal health care? Same answer, corruption, 100%. This is also in the book. I think this one's chapter 2. Anyway, no, it's still chapter 1. It's about Obamacare and how Obama said that he was going to do a public option. He said he was going to negotiate drug prices. In fact, he even ran commercials on it, okay? And then what happened was he got in office and instantly said, no, I was just kidding, whatever. Ascribe any motive you want to him. But he says drug companies are too powerful. There's quotes from all sorts of senators saying they're too powerful. So we just gave them what they wanted, which is we will not negotiate drug prices. They can charge anything they want to Americans, anything. Bush did it, Obama did it, Trump did it, Biden's doing it. They're all corrupt. Yes, I said it, they're all corrupt. They all take tons of money from those drug companies and they sell you out. So you say, well, Obama's an angel. That's what I heard on mainstream media. So he gets to be accepted from all that. Really? He's the one who made the deal. Well, he says it's because too many Democratic senators are also taking money from drug companies. How about you fight them? You were the leader of the party. You had a mandate. You had super majorities.
You ran on hope and change.
Yeah, and what'd you give us? Nothing on hope and change. It's just a big gag. But he's got a giant house in Martha's Vineyard, so well played. All right, back on TYT, Jake and Anna with you guys, and KevZ247 gifted 5 Young Turks memberships. We appreciate it, brother. Anna.
All right. Student athletes in Florida could be forced to turn in detailed information about their menstrual cycles because, politicians in Florida, conservatives in Florida are real concerned about being creepy toward underage students. Now, remember, this is the same state that has made the teaching profession so difficult that teachers have gotten rid of books in their classrooms out of fear that they'll be prosecuted for having a book that is deemed inappropriate for students. I mean, there are literal book bans happening as we speak in Florida because they're worried about sexualizing students. And at the same time, they're now calling for mandatory paperwork and detailed information about these students' menstrual cycles. So this is an anti-trans policy. Let's just be clear about that. Let me give you the details. This comes after the Florida High School Athletics Association announced last October that it was changing its physical form for student athletes to a digital version. Now that form includes optional but detailed questions about students' menstruation cycles, including when they got their first period, when they had their most recent one, and how many weeks passed between periods. But now The FHSAA wants to see those recommendations not only put into action, but mandatory. Despite widespread public outcry, an FHSAA panel not only decided Tuesday night to stand by that change, but to also recommend that the menstrual history questions be made mandatory. The recommendation now goes before the FHSAA board of directors, which will meet in late February to make their final decision. Now, look, I think this is super creepy. I don't think there is any reason for any adult in any school system in any state to ask female athletes detailed information about their menstruation. Okay, it is one of the creepy. I mean, I just, and this is all because they want to discriminate against transgender athletes. That's what this is all about at the end of the day.
So look, I'm not sure that they're all perverts, but sure, that's a distinct possibility. Use the transgender issue as a way of, let me check all the girls in high school, their menstrual cycles, okay? I don't know how they get off on it. I don't know what their perversion is, but a lot of Republicans are perverts that like to use this as an excuse to find out the personal lives of kids. Well, you know, they suggested in other states doing genitalia checks. I bet every one of them raised their hand to be the checker, okay, of little kids. You know, that's what groomers do. Very Republican of them. So in this case, though, it's probably mainly because they want to spread hatred towards people who are transgender. And so violating your daughter's privacy in the most extreme way imaginable is just a side effect of their hatred, okay? So does that make you feel better?
I mean, it's the way they're doing this too is super creepy and has some serious privacy violation implications. So period tracker apps and the platform that hosts Florida's new digital athletics forum are not owned by medical institutions and therefore are not subject to health privacy laws. If subpoenaed for someone's data, particularly in a state where abortion has been made illegal, companies would be required to hand it over. No, there's nothing, this sounds like freedom, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
Real freedom.
Yeah. These are the guys who talk about cancel culture and then remove all books from the libraries that we just showed you in a different story today in same state, Florida. And then they're like, look, man, you do whatever you want and freedom, etc. But now give me all of your private details and you don't have a choice. And I'm gonna have all my perverts in the Republican Party rifle through it. And underage girls, oh, even better. Those are the ones we had to check the most. Yeah, I'm sure it is. Look, again, I don't know what perversions you guys are into, but this is disgusting. If I lived in a red state, there's no way in the world I'm gonna hand over my daughter's information to a bunch of pervert Republicans.
And look,
0% chance.
And I want to be clear that there are other states that have, some requirements that might seem similar to this, but there's a huge difference. So let's go to Jessica Valenti's tweet here, because as she mentions, other states and athletic programs require physicals, including details about menstruation, from students. But they allow all that private info to stay with the kids' doctors. And this is the really creepy part because Florida doesn't. They want it turned in directly to school administrators.
Yeah, because freedom, because we care, don't tread on me. I mean, unless it's your menstrual cycle, then literally tread on us.
Oh God.
Okay, I mean, look, that's the Republican policy in Florida. Enjoy it, people in Florida, and give away all of your daughter's information to them. I'm sure somebody will get off on it. Sick, you people are sick.
All right, let's talk about a tone deaf CEO. So, a tech CEO has been forced to apologize after she decided to use a Martin Luther King Jr. quote while laying off 7% of her employees in the exact same email. It's the context in which she used it that's so incredibly insulting here, because she really made herself out to be some sort of hero as she's firing 7% of her workers. So the CEO in question here is Jennifer Tejada. She's the CEO of PagerDuty, which is a cloud-based computing company. Last week, she wrote this lengthy email to her employees about the state of the company. 6 paragraphs into the email, she wrote that the company would be making some refinements, including but not limited to laying off 7% of the workers. Now, many more paragraphs later, she announced some promotions and wrote that the company was expected to finish the year strong. None of this would be possible without you, our leadership and our board. Thank you for your grit and resilience, your commitment to our customers, and your support of our values and people. I am reminded in moments like this of something Martin Luther King said, that the ultimate measure of a leader is not where they stand in the moments of comfort and convenience, but where they stand in times of challenge and controversy. By the way, 7% of you are fired. I am a hero. I am doing something difficult in firing you, but you're fired. Yeah. And I'm not. I still have my livelihood intact. See you later. Come on.
Yeah. No, look, so guys, this is a brutal industry, anything related to digital tech, et cetera. And there's, and sustainability is often hard, and sometimes there's layoffs. What you don't do in a layoff is talk about how heroic your leadership and your board is for authorizing the layoffs. And by the way, it's uncomfortable. I get that it's uncomfortable. So she probably, this is
She's the worst.
The oldest issue in humanity. People, the hardest thing in the world is to escape your own perspective. Because in her perspective, she's like, man, this is really hard. I really don't want to fire these people. But you know what? My board is right. We got to fire them, okay? I'm going to be courageous. Oh, look this MLK quote about how courageous I am.
No, Cenk, you want to know how much money she makes?
Oh no, what is it?
Her 2022 pay jumped 98% to 13 million.
Oh my God, no.
Okay.
No, not courageous.
Not courageous. No, it's so insulting. So she was, there was a lot of backlash, justified backlash. And she ended up apologizing for it. She says, there are a number of things I would do differently if I could. The quote I included from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was inappropriate and insensitive. I should have been more upfront about the layoffs in the email. No, you don't use a quote from MLK to make yourself appear to be a courageous hero in the same email where you're firing your employees. That's not courageous. That is just awful.
King did a march on poverty, okay? And by the way, some people are gonna require courage, the people that you're laying off. And you're supposed to be sensitive to their issues, their feelings. Look, I'm actually less bothered by the quote, which is really bad, than the beginning where she's praising the courage of her leadership and her board. And by the way, you know what?
She's using his quote to make that point about
I know,
herself.
same thing.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's the worst part. Yeah.
And you know what would be courageous? If you took a pay cut, like a 50% pay cut.
To save the jobs of the individuals you're firing.
And by the way, I can do the math on that. You would have saved $6.5 million for your company and saved a lot of jobs. I have a general sense of how many jobs you could save from that, and it is a lot. Okay, that would have been courageous. And by the way, you'd still make $6.5 million. And I would give you credit. I say, look, I know she makes 13, but I guess the company does well, although not so well lately, okay. But you know what, at least she gave 50% back, that's amazing, great job.
But remember-
But not this, come on.
Look, a lot of that money, 12 million, is in stock rewards or awards. And when that's the majority of your compensation, it's based in stocks associated with the company. Well, you get paid more if the value of those shares jumps up. And the value of those shares tend to jump up when you're willing to lay off a bunch of people.
You know why? Because, and by the way, if you guys don't know, let me just explain real quick. For the investor community, there's a lot of upsides and good people in that community, but there's also some bad folks in that community.
A lot of them.
And some of them think that, hey, being able to be tough enough to not show compassion and fire people is courageous. That's why she wrote that. Because in their bubble, that is a real thing that they call themselves as they're firing you. Insane. It's just they need perspective very, very badly.
We've got an awesome bonus episode. We're gonna talk about a streamer who got caught watching deep fake porn of other streamers on Twitch, and his apology was pathetic. Don't miss it, tyt.com/join. See you there.
Can't let that happen.
You know what the progressive movement needs? It needs a little energy, a little pizzazz, maybe a little caffeine. Oh, coffee. But what if it was too strong coffee? Yes, new, toostrongcoffee.com/TYT. Look, this helps progressive causes. It's also organic and fair trade, so you've got peace of mind that it was done right, and it happens to taste great.